Welcome to another edition of AVRant. I'm Tom Andry, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AVRant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. And it is now official. My parents have a better TV than I have. Not as large. There's this 55-inch they went for. But they got the LG C7 OLED. It is very, very nice. I, of course, set it up. It needed virtually no calibration at all.
That's good.
I could have maybe increased the high red point by one click, and that was about it. For some weird reason, they have edge enhancement on by default on everything, so that had to be turned off. But other than that...
Yeah, my friend who's got a 4K TV, his M series Vizio, I have not been over. I've been over there a couple times, but I haven't even spent 2 seconds in front of that TV. So it's just... It's been crazy. Start of school, it's everything crazy. So, I mean, it's got a good picture. We know that. And the calibration was
super easy.
Super easy. So,
yeah. So first, Ultra HD Blu-ray, because they also got the LG Ultra HD Blu-ray player along with it. So we watched The Martian, the extended version. Yeah. So that's my first time watching HDR in a proper setting that wasn't like a store setting or something like that. It's very nice. I mean, it's relatively subtle, but at the same time, Martian was a great example because they have lots of small lights in all the displays and on the headlamps and stuff that they're wearing.
Sure.
So it looks very realistic. It looks like, oh yeah, those are actually lights. You don't get that sort of... By comparison, regular Blu-ray and standard dynamic range now looks a little bit flat. Looks a little bit flat, bit muted. So very, very, very nice. Confirmed that Dolby Vision works with Netflix. It's all good. There you go.
And is it worth the upgrade in price?
Over
like a 1080p display, or another 4K display that's not.
Well, I mean, I gotta say, for someone like me, so The Martian is in 2.35 to 1, so you got the black bars on the top and bottom, and I mean, those are black. They just completely disappear into the very, very thin frame around the television, and unlike my LCDs that I have, that have local dimming, those black bars, they never illuminate even in the slightest. I can notice the black bars on my displays, even with local dimming. Sometimes there's a bright object near the top or the bottom of the screen, and a little bit of that haloing gets into that black bar and illuminates it. Doesn't happen with an OLED. The star fields look spectacular. Each little pinpoint of light is surrounded by complete inky blackness, so it's very, very nice. I mean, yes, it's expensive, especially in Canada, where the exchange rate makes it even more expensive, but it's a darn nice television. So
that's good.
Yeah.
So I watched the new Ghostbusters.
Right.
The all-woman version of the Ghostbusters.
I haven't seen it.
People were very angry before it ever came out about. Yeah, just like, how dare you? You're ruining my childhood.
Yeah.
No, dude, your parents and you did that just fine all by yourself. Middle school ruined your childhood. Thank you very much. It ruined all of our childhoods. Puberty also was a contributing factor. The movie itself was fine. I liked it. I thought it was fine. It was a little, and if you've ever seen, and you don't have to admit this out loud to anybody, if you've ever seen the fourth Mummy movie, the one with Jet Li.
Oh, there was that, wasn't there?
Yeah. If you've seen that movie, it is, for me, the prime example of what I'm about to describe.
Okay.
It is a movie that is so busy trying to impress you with the special effects and the visuals and everything that's going on that there is no time to do anything else with the characters or anything. So we start off with a short little intro to Kristen Wiig's character.
Okay.
And we get a little bit of, I can't remember her name, Mike and Molly girl. What's her name? She was in The Spy.
Right. Why am I forgetting now?
I know.
I forget now.
Anyways.
I'm sorry.
You guys were all you all screaming at your whatever
happens.
Computers or whatever.
Brain fart.
It's fallen out of my head. Anyways, we get a little bit of her character, and then there's two other characters that one gets a little bit explained because she has a part where she gets sort of haunted, and that's why she becomes part of the team. The other one's just, I'm crazy.
Sure.
And that's it.
Melissa McCarthy, by the way.
That's it. Oh, it was driving me nuts. Anyways, And it could have been I mean, the thing about Ghostbusters, the first Ghostbusters movie, was that there was character development. We got to see where they started and then how they progressed through. And we got to see the interaction between the characters. There wasn't any real actual character growth. You didn't see Bill Murray at the beginning start off as one character and end up as somebody completely different. They started off doing the thing that they did at the end. They did this thing, and this is all the stuff that happened to them. And that's fine. This movie didn't even pretend to have that. It's like, here's a bunch of excuses for us to do special effects, and then also do a lot of callbacks to the first movie. It really is, and it's disappointing to me because I thought there was some good stuff in there. One thing that was really interesting, Rob, and for all you people out there who follow the little cult of Rob, where you have to have 2 screens and so the 2.35 to 1, all that stuff.
Right.
They actually had stuff shoot off of the letterboxed
into the black bars. Right?
Into the black bars.
Right. Yeah, I heard about that.
That's it. When it happened, I was like, "That's kind of cool." Like it was the ghosts and the proton thingies, right? And that was actually kind of cool. I liked it. I liked that these beams, like said, hey, or the ghosts were like, hey, we are not confined to your stupid little.
Be interesting on a 2.35 to 1 constant image height screen setup. It's just
I don't
projecting up onto the wall above your screen.
I guess so. But anyways, I thought so. For those of you that want to do the thing that Rob wants to do, then just remember that
there's another example.
This
not just the Dark Knight anymore.
This Ghostbusters movie is not going to be for you. Well, and probably Dunkirk either. That finally comes out.
I'm sure.
So, this is AVRant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. To get your questions answered, all you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. You can come to www.avrant.com and leave us a comment there. Facebook.com/avrantpodcast. YouTube.com/c/avrant for our YouTube channel, where you can see your question and everybody else's answered in slightly the order that it was received and the order that was posted by Austin. I don't know how that happens through magic.
Or me, in the case of this week.
Oh, you posted the individual questions?
Oh, no.
Oh.
Not on the YouTube videos. I meant for the topic list.
Oh, yeah, for the topic list. No, we haven't done that yet. Then, let's see here. If you want to contact us directly, you can contact Rob at avrant.com, Tom at avrant.com for me. Rob's Twitter is at FirstReflect. Mine is at avrant_Tom. Our producer, Austin, who we just sort of kind of mentioned, he helps put together the question list, usually. I think lately he's been busy with other things, probably doing squats.
Yeah, getting ready.
Getting ready for his
big old subwoofers coming over.
PB16 Ultra.
That's what was requested. We'll see if it's fulfilled.
I don't know what's going to happen with that. So anyways, we'll see what happens. Anyway, Austin does do all of our videos except for the full-length one, that's why that one doesn't look as good as the other ones.
Yeah, that's right.
Austin puts together all the rest of those things, and he's got his own podcast, the We Watch Movies podcast. So actually a podcast about flat Earth deniers and how to refute them.
Wouldn't they be round Earth deniers? They're denying that the Earth is round.
Oh, yeah, that's what I mean. The flat Earth, they are denying that the flat Earth people know what they're talking about. So whatever that is, the flat Earth people, they are rebutting them.
Oh.
It's now, you would think to yourself, why would they call it the We Watch Movies podcast? You would think that would not be, but they say it's because they are afraid that the reptilian overlords will find out what they're doing and get them.
So the reptilian overlords believe the Earth is flat?
No, the reptilian overlords are against the Austin and his little crew. I don't know why.
Austin and his crew are rebuking the people who say that the Earth is flat.
That's right.
So the lizard people are on the side of the people who say the Earth is flat.
I don't really know that that's the case, but I know
that's
that
why they call it We Watch Movies. Clears it all up, not confusing at all.
Not at all. Well, I mean, they're incognito.
Right.
I guess.
We have too many questions.
I'm going to tell you right now, I got almost no sleep. So it is going to be a perhaps short podcast that might happen. More likely, it's going to be one where I get more and more discombobulated as this podcast goes on. By the end, I will not be able to say the word discombobulated, guaranteed. We want to start, as we always do, by thanking our listeners of the week. This week, we were going to thank Jay. Jay went to www.avrant.com and clicked on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link. There, he was able to leave us a PayPal donation, which goes into our coffers, help pay for hosting fees and other such expenses that we have around here. So we want to thank you, Jay, for your donation.
Yeah, Jay, thanks so much for that donation. We appreciate it.
And we also want to thank Fred. He bought a Denon AVR X4300H from Accessories for Less. And while he didn't have to, he wanted to support the podcast, and he did that by letting them know that not only did he buy that receiver from them because of us, but he bought his last receiver from them because of us. So thank you, Fred, for talking us up to Accessories for Less.
Yeah, thanks, Fred, and congratulations. X4300, very nice.
That's the one I would get if I got a new receiver. That would be my choice.
High value.
High value right there. I've actually been thinking about getting a new receiver. I haven't told my wife yet.
I know you are.
I know. It's very tempting. But I don't want to. Because I don't want to. I don't want to have to rewire things. All right. Let's get started. What's the news here? We got, are these comments or news? News. From Tom, this is not me, different guy, on Facebook. He says the 843 million. Dude, how do you even say this word?
Well, it's spelled as Elbphilharmonie, but it's German, so that is absolutely not how you pronounce it. I don't know.
There's a place in Hamburg, Germany.
Yeah, it's sort of like Philharmonic, but it's something else.
Anyways, it's got a number of auditoriums. I know it's got a number because it's got a central auditorium.
Yeah.
Okay, the largest of three, it says, in this building, that has been designed to create a completely balanced reverberation across every single one of the 2,150 seats. The overall design is reminiscent of a coral reef, and there are 10,000 unique acoustic panels that use a combined 1 million divots that look like the imprints of seashells of various depths and widths to absorb and diffuse reflected sound waves. And an algorithm was used to design each panel individually for a specific location within the auditorium.
It's pretty cool. I mean, that room overall is a cool looking room.
Yeah, so I guess is it in the round? It looks like it's in the round. So you just sit in the middle there and you stare down at everybody. I guess everybody's staring down at you from all sides. I mean, from what I can see
the
here.
performer is somewhat towards the middle of this room. Not exactly the middle, a little offset. But there are
big mushroom
seats
thing
behind
that's
the
hanging
performer.
from the ceiling. The big mushroom. That's got to be like a big old bass trap, huh?
Or diffuser type thing.
And then there's something hanging off of that too. Sometimes,
yeah.
Like one of the pictures has something hanging off of that.
Yeah, I'm sure it can lower or raise or something. That's what it looks like it can do. Anyway, interesting thing. I like it.
All right, Germany, you go. You do you. All right, the Internet Archive is digitizing a large collection of 78. So these are the precursors to the LP records. They are including the surface noise and sometimes using multiple different needles to retain the imperfections and analog differences. The project is intended for research and preservation purposes, but any individual can download the files for their own private use. So that's something I'm never going to do.
Go and get yourself a big collection of rare 78s, because they said they're focusing primarily on things that aren't available digitally in any form. So that's kind of neat.
I guess so.
Yeah.
I'm never going to listen to that. That'll just annoy me. It's fine. I understand that other people don't agree with that, and I'm okay with that. Disney is ending their partnership with Netflix and launching their own streaming service in 2019. So I think this partnership has gone on for 4 months?
Well, they signed it in 2012, but it actually only came into effect last year.
Yeah, I was going to say, it hasn't been that long.
Yeah, so Disney is saying that anything that is on Netflix or will be on Netflix up through 2019, Netflix still has the rights to all of that. That's part of their original agreement, but they are not going to re-up the agreement, which expires in 2019. Instead, they decided to open their own streaming service because they're Disney and they have a ton of content.
Right. They're also launching a separate ESPN streaming service in 2018 as well. So, actually, now that separate ESPN streaming service, I think, is a needed thing. honestly. I like that idea. I am fine with Disney doing it. Everybody knew Disney was going to do this.
Yeah,
this
but
is not a surprise.
See, the problem is every studio is going to end up doing this.
Oh, I know.
You're going to be paying $10, $12 a month to every single studio individually. It's going to be a mess.
Or you're going to do what I think is going to end up happening, which is you're going to pick one that you like that has most of the stuff you like on it. Mm-hmm. And if other people start talking about other things that you're interested in, you'll figure out a different way to consume those, however they may be. Because in the end, most people, I mean, you can still go buy Blu-rays or DVDs, right, of Orange is the New Black if you don't have Netflix. I mean, you can get it. So, I mean, it's just going to end up, this is going to be pretty fragmented, but in the end, we're going to have some overall winners, and they're going to continue to get bigger. Shonda Rhimes has left NBC Studios and will now... Would I say NBC? Yeah. ABC Studios will now create a new series for Netflix. So the current shows, the ones that she's already done for them, Grey's Anatomy, Scandal, How to Get Away with Murder, and the shows already in the works at ABC will continue there. Mm-hmm. But any new shows she creates will be exclusively on Netflix. Yeah. So I heard an interview with her not too long ago, and she was, I mean, she works. I mean, it's all she does.
And very successful.
Very successful. I'm excited about that. So that's a good thing.
I mean, not only that, I mean, her shows, like one TV critic was like, oh, so her characters can finally stop saying friggin'? Because it's going to be on Netflix. They can finally use normal language and maybe have some nudity during all the, the love scenes and that. So, yeah. Instead of being... I
can't say I've watched any of her TV shows. I do have friends who have watched Grey's Anatomy multiple times.
Yeah.
More accurately, I think I've had friends' children watch it multiple times. Middle school, high school age kids. It's not really my cup of tea, and that's fine. But I'm glad the more content we can get on Netflix, the more likely it is.
Well, Netflix will continue. Netflix saw the writing on the wall. They're like, hey, especially when Starz left and stuff, they're like, eventually, all of these studios are just going to open their own streaming services, exactly like what Disney just announced. So, we better start making our own content. As they famously said, we need to become HBO before HBO can become us. So, this is pretty big. This is having Shonda Rhimes on board, having her new content exclusive to them, that makes them, that much more appealing to a whole other demographic. So,
and I think, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, Netflix has got themselves a real gold mine in that they don't have all the controls upon them that all these other people have been living with for so long.
Yeah.
And I can understand Disney wanting to have their own thing. I mean, it is Disney, and Disney does a completely different thing. Like you could see Disney being, but why would you want to have a CBS and an NBC and an ABC and all these other things? They're kind of all the same thing. You want them all to be together, right? Where nice. Disney, I can kind of understand.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what happens with the Marvel shows, right? Because of course Marvel is owned by Disney, so. But
those are supposed to stay.
Yeah, certainly the ones that already exist, because those were financed by Netflix, not by Disney necessarily. Sure. So, the existing Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Defenders that's coming up, that's staying there. But go moving forward past 2019.
I heard that Defenders. I've seen some early reviews saying that Defenders. Whenever I see an early review of something, I read just far enough to see, they get the too long didn't read part of it, and then I stop reading. So. I didn't read specific. I don't want any spoilers, so I don't know that much about it. But it seemed like I'm seeing positive stuff out there.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about that. Mostly, they say everybody seems to have to have their own character, and Iron Fist apparently gets mocked the entire time, which hey,
they figured it out.
Yeah, dude, bro, needed it. So yeah, let's go with that. Yeah, so I'm excited about the Defenders coming out this week, too. Let's get to the questions.
Let's shall.
Bobby. All right. Bobby's front left-right speakers will be roughly 7 feet apart. And he's read that in-ceiling Atmos speakers should be in the same distance apart as the front speakers, but will it matter much if they're a little closer together, say 6 feet instead of 7? No.
That's fine.
Yeah, we're fine with that. I mean, as long as you're sitting in between them. Yeah. I mean, I really, and this is, I don't know if this question comes up here, but I remember reading it at some point. Somebody was going to use like a sound bar for like the left.
Yeah,
the
that was
left
last
center,
week. Yeah.
okay, but you're still going to want to put the Atmos on either side of the couch, so that you don't want to line it right up with that. That would be silly.
Yeah, similar advice to what we said last week, which is if you go by Dolby's recommendation, your front left-right speakers should be somewhere between 22.5 to 30 degrees to the left and right of straight ahead center. So you go straight ahead center, call that 0 degrees, go minus 22.5 to minus 30 for your front left speaker, go plus 22.5 to plus 30 for your front right speaker. Now that creates a range of distances between your front left and right speaker. The Atmos speakers should be within that same range. But if it turns out that your front speakers are closer to 30 degrees left and right, and your Atmos speakers are closer to 22.5 degrees left and right, that's still okay. They're still within the ranges where they ought to be. So that's how to look at that.
Okay. So he says he was about to, sorry, I clicked the wrong thing. He was about to pull the trigger on a pair of Klipsch R14 surrounds, which have dual tweeters and a single woofer in a half-moon shaped cabinet that mounts flush on the wall. But then you notice the Gallery G12 model that is super flat. Should you get the G12 instead? What is he talking about here? For the surrounds or for the Atmos?
Surrounds. For the surrounds.
Okay, you can do either, I think, but it really feel like the Gallery ones is more in line with what Atmos is now saying, or Dolby is now saying that you should be getting.
I mean, I was thinking there are different series from his front, left, right speakers.
Where are his front ones again? I forgot.
Those were
It doesn't say.
The reference bookshelf speakers. We've talked to Bobby several times in the past. So.
I don't remember any of that.
Yeah,
the reference book. So the R14s would be in the same series, right?
They're in the same series, yeah. He wanted something that could wall mount and wouldn't have to go on a bracket to stick out. So that's why the dedicated surround speakers are an attractive option there. I'm leaning towards staying with that because it's got the same horn, it's got the same woofer, it's got the same tweeter.
But if he's got an option that's not, sort of
it's a completely
widest.
Different series. I mean, it's not even really a.
I'm saying within the reference series.
Oh, within the reference series.
Within the reference series. I mean, because you're right. I didn't know that these were completely.
Yeah, I mean, there's
ones.
really only the bookshelf speaker, and then you'd have to put it on a wall mount, a wall bracket. He was hoping for something that can just flush.
If you
mount.
want to make sure that your timbre matched all the way around, I think that sticking with the reference series makes the most sense.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
I don't think it's unfortunate.
Well, I don't either. I guess what I'm saying is that.
But yeah, I'm leaning that way. Stay within the same series if you can.
Yeah. So we decided to go with the 92-inch 16:9 screen. How high should the bottom of that screen be above the floor? He'll be sitting 11 feet away, single row of seats, no riser.
Mm-hmm.
So single 96. I don't know.
So the THX recommendation is that you start with where you're sitting, and you get your resting eye line, which, keep in mind, might not be perfectly parallel to the ground. Especially if you have a recliner, your resting eye line might be at a slight upward angle.
Yeah.
But get your resting eye line, and wherever your resting eye line would hit the front wall or hit your screen, then go 15 degrees above that. That's the maximum height where it ought to be. That's THX's recommendation. Now, it doesn't have to be that high. That's just the highest it should be, according to THX's recommendation. The other common recommendation is to just have your eyes about even with 1/3 of the height of the screen. So have 2/3 of the screen above your eye line and 1/3 of the screen below your eye line. So if we take all that into account, a 92-inch screen is 45 inches tall. We're going to assume a normal eye line height of about 36 inches off the ground. So that means the bottom of the screen should be between 10 to 15 inches lower than that, which means 21 to 26 inches above the floor. So roughly 2 feet above the floor, in this case, is where the bottom edge of the screen should be. Now, that's the actual screen. Keep in mind that you have the frame of the screen. However tall that is, usually on a projection screen, that's 2.5 or 3 inches. So if you're trying to make sure that your center channel is going to fit below it or something, make sure you do account for the width of the frame. But basically roughly 2 feet off the ground for the bottom edge of the image itself.
The other option is, especially if it's a fixed frame, even if it's not fixed frame, if it's pulled down or whatever, is just to get it and hold it up there and sit down and go, I like it right there, mark it.
Yep. Or you
And-
don't even need the screen for that. If you have the projector before you
Yeah,
have
yeah.
the screen,
That's
you can
right.
just project the image on there, especially if you have vertical lens shift. You just move it until it's at a comfortable place and you go, that's where I should put my screen.
Yeah, I'm sort of in that camp. You know,
Oh, yeah.
What I did with my screen that's currently behind me, it's too low. It is too low, but it is as high as I could make it without my projector hitting the fan.
Right.
I had to take the globe thing off there, so now it's just naked bulbs up there. I need to take the entire light thing and maybe get a
So
smaller fan.
basically your projector is as high as it can be.
Yeah.
Because there's a fan that would start blocking its image otherwise, and then that let you figure out where your screen needs to be in relation to that.
That's right. And again, I did the exact same thing you just talked about. I just projected the image on the screen and then marked it.
Yep.
Matt came across a video from Engadget titled "The Best Home Theater Gear for Back to School 2017." Back to school and home theater in the same sentence seemed odd, but anyway, they recommend a 43-inch 4K Element brand TV and the new Sonos Play Base for back to school, in this case college. It's a great idea if you like to get your stuff stolen by your roommates. The
Right.
43-inch TV sounds small considering the distance away from the couch is likely to be, and the Play Base would probably be stolen or damaged from spilled drinks in a dorm room. Matt expects better of us than Engadget, so what would be our best home theater gear for back to school 27B? And I guess Austin dislikes their lack of capitalization. I don't know
Yeah,
what's wrong with
the
that.
title in their video is not capitalized as a title, so he's
yeah.
like, that's not
okay.
good writing.
This is back to school lists. I mean, this is all just Google placement. That's all this
Sure.
is. They're just trying to get clicks, so it's a kind of a clickbait sort of thing. And you clicked on it because you're like, back to school and home theater. How does the other half live? And then clicked on it. They don't live like this because 43-inch. Okay.
The claim to fame of that particular, the Element brand, is that it has Amazon Fire built in.
Yeah.
So you know how some have Roku built in, some have, whatever built in. This happens to have Amazon Fire built in. That's the claim to fame there. It's not a very good TV.
No, I've seen Elements before. They're not great.
And that sound base is crazy expensive.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's odd choices, I have to say.
It is. If I was putting together a back to school list of, I'm going to say AV gear rather than home theater gear. I think the sort of things I would be looking at would be headphones,
Yeah, I knew you were going to say that.
because that's what you need. More than anything, you need headphones.
Yep.
Everything else is completely. I mean, it's not. That's not even the same class.
Yeah.
Because if you got headphones, you can do homework and listen to your music and watch your videos and do whatever you want without disturbing anybody else.
That's
and
right.
sometimes that's the only time. So my number one thing on there would be headphones. I'd probably be looking at those ATH M50s or whatever.
Audio
they are,
Technicas.
Audio Technica headphones. Bulletproof, very, very reasonably priced, usually around $120.
Yeah.
Absolutely fantastic sound.
I might say the Sony, the 7506s.
Yep.
Similar thing.
I would also be looking at, if I was looking at TVs, the ones I had up in when I did that the Airbnb thing, they had the TCL ones.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the name, the brand of them? TCLs?
It could be, yeah.
Okay. Anyways, they had Roku built in, I think. Is that right?
Yeah, it's Roku built in, yeah.
Yeah. And that, I think, would be good because it's just one less thing for all them. But honestly, I don't think I'd be taking a TV. If I were, I'd just be getting a laptop, some headphones, and send them on their way.
Which is what most students do get.
Yeah.
I was thinking you might grab a Pico projector, which
Yeah,
of
that
course
would be
will
nice.
probably get stolen, but
Or lost.
or lost. But a Pico projector, obviously easy to carry around.
Right.
Usually works off an LED light engine, and they just cast the thing onto your wall, make whatever screen size you want by how far away you put it from the wall.
Yeah, and since you're going to probably be streaming most of your stuff from the internet for free because you torrent
that's
stuff
right.
because you're a dirty,
So you
filthy
connect your
college student.
computer to your Pico projector,
Yeah.
voila, you have your big screen.
And there's like Ben Q's got a couple like real small ones. They're like this.
Oh, yeah.
They're the size of a Roku box, but they're a projector. Yeah, can they get a big image? Absolutely. Can you see it? If it's real dark, you can. So you're talking about throwing up a white sheet on the wall.
Yeah. Or even
and-
just if you have a white painted wall, good enough.
Yeah, and then
For
I
that
think I would
purpose.
also probably suggest like some Audio Engine
Oh, sure, yeah.
speakers.
Yeah,
As
that'd
an
be a good
option.
choice. Yeah. So, I mean, if you want something similar to what Engadget said, I agree with the TCL choice, especially their P series. Now, the P series TCL, has Dolby Vision built in, HDR, 4K, and Roku built in. More expensive than the 43-inch Element, but save a ton of money on the speaker base. I'd get the Fluence speaker base instead of the Sonos one.
Okay.
And you'd still be $100 to the good with that versus the extra money you're paying for that Sonos base. Or you can go even cheaper, get a Vizio soundbar if you want something similar. So
with like the Audio Engine speakers, you could actually just use those as your TV speakers as well.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's no reason you couldn't do that. So there's a lot of options here. But really, what it really comes down to is like, let's just be reasonable. It's not going to be a back to school
headphones and a laptop. That's what it is.
That's what it is. That's what you're. And clothes. And
Right.
a lot of condoms probably. I mean, if you, no one's going to buy that for you, but you should probably get some. Andrew, this comes from Facebook. Andrew finished his whole basement in one large renovation, and he pre-wired for 7.2 inside the walls. With the limited budget he had left over, he picked up used speakers. Paradigm Monitor 9s, Paradigm CC 290 center, and Paradigm 12-inch sub, and a Velodyne 10-inch sub, and a set of Energy Take Classics.
That's pretty good finds.
That is pretty good find.
Clearly knew some good products to keep an eye out for, so
yeah.
that's nice stuff.
Yeah. So if he expands to Atmos, could he use the Energy Take Classic speakers, or does he need special Atmos speakers? Now, you could totally use those energies.
Yeah, I mean, as long as you have a method of attaching them to the ceiling or high up on a wall, because it doesn't have to go on your ceiling. You can just go high up on a wall. Now, the Energy Take Classics are very small and light, so they're very easy to wall mount or ceiling mount. But yeah, I mean, as long as you're willing to mount them high up on the wall or on the ceiling, you can absolutely use them for Atmos, for sure.
So he says if he sticks with the 7.2 setup, would bipole surround speakers make a huge, worthwhile difference? The room was 12 by 18, and it's a dedicated home theater. I'm going to say no. I don't think they would make a huge difference. Would they make a difference? Maybe.
Little wider dispersion.
I don't know that you would. I don't think that on any level you would say it was huge, and I also don't think that you would notice it very often, if at all.
Like, let's say in your search for used speakers, you came across some of Paradigm's. Theirs is kind of like a half dipole, half bipole.
Right.
The woofers are bipole, but the tweeters are dipole. Let's say you came across some of those and you happen to find them used and they match the rest of your series. I'd be fine with you getting them. I'd also be completely fine with you getting just some bookshelf speakers in the Monitor series from Paradigm and using those as your surrounds. So whatever you happen to find that matches, or you know what, Paradigm's, well, he even asked this later, but Paradigm has a very neutral Canadian sound, that NRC designed sound, so they match very nicely with PSB, Energy, anything else that's quite neutral. RBH, NHT, Aperion, Ascend. They don't sound identical, but they're close enough that it's not going to be offensive to ears at all, especially as surrounds. So lots of choices there. Yeah.
So he says for surround and surround back position, he says timbre matching make a huge difference. Should be looking for matching Paradigm surrounds. Especially surround backs, by all accounts, timbre matching is not important. Now, highly mismatched speakers can be an issue, but that's not what you're talking about here.
If you had BNWs as your fronts and Klipsch's as your surrounds,
that would be an issue.
Probably notice, right? Yeah.
And there's a reason, and the reason so that people are like, "What's wrong with BMWs?" Nothing. They are hard to drive speakers, generally speaking. They have a characteristic sound that they're going for. Klipsch speakers are very easy to drive. They're horn loaded, and they have a very characteristic sound. Those two characteristics completely different from each other.
Yeah.
And you're going to have a problem with your receiver trying to level match those two speakers because the surrounds are going to take almost no power, and the fronts are going to take a ton. So you're going to find that when you go into your settings after it does its room setup, you're going to get like negative 12 or whatever the maximum is on all the surround speakers, and plus 12 on the fronts, and they're still not going to be perfectly level. Your surrounds are still going to be louder than your your fronts. So that's why you can have some issues.
Yeah, but on the other hand, you got your Paradigm front stage. If you added some PSB surrounds, some Energy surrounds, you're already using the Energy Take Classic surrounds.
Yeah, stick with those.
You tell us, how bad is that really?
Yeah.
It's I'm betting it sounds very reasonable and very okay. So when you have speakers that are not identical but pretty similar, that's absolutely close enough to be a satisfying experience.
That's right.
Yeah.
TJ and his wife moved to a new house. The living room is 20 feet wide and 15 feet long, and the couch is against the back wall with the TV all the way across the room, about 14 feet away. So his wife doesn't want to see any large tower speakers or speakers on stands out in the room, so he's trying to figure out what to do. Is there a sound bar that can produce sound quality comparable to his B&W DM604 front speakers? Should he go for in-wall speakers? He could budget as much as $10,000 for a complete speaker system update if it's all going to be in-walls and fully installed. But if there's something visually unobtrusive that would sound great, and he could use it with his Denon 4806 receiver, he'd like to hear about it. So I kind of went to the B&W website to try to figure out what these speakers are. They must be older speakers because they're not listed.
But they're part of the 600 series, so that's a pretty well-known series.
So that if you look in their in-wall options, they have the Performance series, which is also the 600 series from what I can tell. So B&W doesn't really like to tell you how much these things cost.
Yeah.
So they can definitely cost a lot, but they're not their highest end level, which is the Reference series, and they're not their lowest ones, which is the Flexible series, which only has a single speaker in it anyways. So these should be the more affordable ones. Does that mean that you're going to be able to get, a 5.0 speaker installation for under $10,000? I don't know, but maybe you should ask about it.
Able to.
It looks reasonable based on the speakers I'm looking at, but I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, really the question is, should he go to greater expense and effort to go for a full in-wall system? I mean, that satisfies the aesthetic concerns, and it can sound really good.
Yeah.
There's no question about that. Or is there an alternative? Now, I was just thinking, because we talked about this last week.
Right.
There are the on-wall solutions, very nice, slim, on-wall solutions that are still passive. They're not your, Yamaha sound projector that does all the work by itself.
Right.
So like RBH with their Ultra series, right? We talked about that last week. They will even customize the width of the speaker bar that houses all three front channels in it. They'll customize the width for no additional charge, whatever size you get, it's the same price. And then the Ultra one, I guess it is, surround, which you could just get 3 separate Ultra Ones and use those as your front 3 if that would work. So these are a slim, good sounding, reasonably affordable on-wall solution that wouldn't require you punching holes in the walls and running the wire through the walls, although it would look better if you ran the wire through the walls. But there is that, if you want to consider that. Kef also makes, a nice speaker bar. They make the very, very thin T1 or T series of speakers if you want something extremely thin that would mount on the wall. Kef also makes very good in-wall and in-ceiling speakers, as does RBH. So it could even be a mix and match type of thing. Maybe you go, in this position, I would rather have something that isn't installed inside the wall. You go for one of their on-wall solutions. But in this other position, or especially if you expand to Atmos for the in-ceilings or something like that, Kef, RBH definitely have good offerings of all types to give you a solution. So that could be an alternative way to go.
And just to give you an idea, I'm looking at the Ultra 3 on-wall, whatever bar thing, because you think of these bars as being kind of bulky. It can be, like you said, it can be custom fit the length, but the depth of it is just over 1.5 inches.
Yeah.
So it's
super slim.
Yeah, it's 1 5/8. So if you directly mount that to your wall, it's less than 2 inches off your wall.
And for that Ultra 3, which has left, center, right all built into that one long slim cabinet that you mount on the wall, it's about $1,100. That's the going price. Yeah. So it's not cheap, but it's certainly not taking up your whole $10,000 budget or anything like that. So
right,
pretty reasonable.
So I mean, but if you really love the B&Ws, there's no reason why you shouldn't look into that option too.
As their in-wall offerings, yeah, they don't really have a on-wall offering that's comparable. That's the thing that's missing in their lineup, but they have in-walls and in-ceilings for sure. Yeah, tough to say. I mean, I can't tell you for sure you must do all in walls or you must do on walls. I'm thinking what's nice is that we've given you now 3 options that you can consider, and especially with RBH and KEF, you have the option of using mix and match, in ceiling, in wall, on wall, whatever's going to work. You can make the aesthetics work for you with good sounding, reasonably affordable speakers. So
Right. All right. All right. I guess this came from our comments. So it's a Lazy Boy 74. I guess is what we're going with here. So he says he and his wife sit roughly 3 feet from the back wall. We've mentioned that sitting close to the back wall can make dialogue more difficult to understand and degrade the sound quality overall. Is 3 feet enough space to overcome this, or would it help to add some absorption on the back wall? Now, before we answer, he also wants to mention that their seats are high back leather recliners. So are those more to blame than being 3 feet from the back wall? His speakers are Ascend CR2s, and they sit about 12 feet away. He says he's got old ears, so dialogue is getting tougher to understand, and it's their biggest concern. What can be done to improve the dialogue intelligibility in their 3.1 setup? He makes a good point. High back leather recliners the leather itself can be somewhat reflective.
yeah, it's like having a surface right behind your head.
So the first thing I would do to test this out is to take a nice plush throw blanket or pillow. Pillow works. I've got a couple of. My wife is always. She turns the AC down to negative 200 degrees Celsius, and then wraps herself up or in a blanket. I'm like, okay, you could just not turn it down so low. Nope. She wants the blanket. So I got blankets all over the place. Throw a blanket behind your head, or a pillow, and just see if that clears things up for you at all. If it does, well, then you know that your high back recliners are making a bit of a problem for you.
Yeah. Yeah, the 3 feet of space behind you, if it's just a hard, flat, parallel wall with nothing to break it up, it's certainly better to be 3 feet away than no feet away.
That's true, but it doesn't mean that 3 feet is going to negate the slap echo that you're going to get off that back wall anyway, so you would want to put some absorption back there.
Yeah, it's rarely a bad idea to have some absorption behind the seats.
Even with your high chairs.
So that wouldn't be a bad idea at all. If you want something decorative back there instead, there are acoustic panels that have printed patterns on them, or you can have any image that you want printed onto the fabric of an acoustic panel. Make it very attractive. It looks like artwork that's meant to be there on your back. Lots of people put some kind of artwork behind their couch, right? That's a very common thing to do. So, you can kill 2 birds with 1 stone. You can have a nice image printed on a panel. So that could be one way to do that. However, I think that might help a little bit. I think if you put the blanket behind and you discover that your high back chair is part of the problem, that will help a little bit. Yeah. But once the issue is just age-related hearing loss, which is completely normal and everybody goes through it, and I'm certainly familiar with it, my dad especially, it's the same thing. It's that dialogue. He can tell somebody's talking, he just has trouble understanding what they're saying. Right. And it's frustrating. It's very, very frustrating. So the good news is you got very, very clear speakers. They're not going to be to blame just directly from the sound that's coming out of them. I'm sure that was one of the reasons why you chose it. You're not sitting so far away that they should be struggling or anything like that. The issue tends to be what most people who start having that age-related hearing loss, they start to find that if there's just somebody talking, so you're watching a TV show and there's only somebody talking, it's okay. It's when there's background music that comes in, especially some of the more resonant around 150 to 300 hertz type of range. That tends to really make it difficult to, somebody's talking, but it's hard to understand what they're saying. So one thing you could try, I'm not certain what AV receiver you have, but most of them do offer some kind of manual EQ adjustment. If you happen to have one of the newest Denon or Marantz AV receivers that lets you use the Odyssey Editor app, and that's only going to be the ones from 2016 and 2017, so it have to be a very recent model. But that would be one way that you could manually, actually drop down the frequency response from 300 hertz on down, and then maybe boost the range from about 1 to 3 kilohertz, because that's where all the consonant sounds live in speech. So there's nothing wrong with tailoring the sound away from what is, completely neutral. This is objectively accurate. When you're trying to counteract age-related hearing loss, it's much more important for you to be able to understand what people are saying than to say, look, I have a ruler flat graph when I measure it. Like, who cares if it's not enjoyable, right?
Exactly. And my parents are sort of in the same boat where they are...
We're all going to be, man. It's just it's what happens.
And to them, and for whatever, they've got some speakers, they're decent little speakers. They're placed horribly. They're on the ground. The tweeters are about, I don't know, 1.5 feet off the ground, firing directly into your shins. They're not angled up or anything, and their room is highly reflective. It's got tile floors, almost nothing on the walls. The only thing in there that's absorptive of it all is the little coffee tables that roll around and the couch itself. Everything else is just highly reflective, and they don't really understand anything that's happening on the TV. So it's they just put subtitles on all the time,
right?
All the time.
Right.
So
but whatever AV receiver you're using, most of them do offer some manual EQ. So I would start by, most of them give you set frequencies where you can either boost or cut.
Right.
So there's going to be something around 300 hertz, something close to that. Drop that down by a few dB, maybe 4 or 5 dB. Lower that part of the manual EQ, and then in the range that's usually there's one right around 2 or 2.5 kilohertz or so.
Yeah.
Raise that up about 4 or 5 dB. That can help quite a bit. It's surprising how much just that adjustment can help. So that's easily worth a try. It doesn't cost you anything, right? So
right.
At least give it a try.
Yeah. Jeff is planning on turning his family room into a shared space with a theater in a roughly 17-foot by 22-foot by 9-foot portion, and a table and chairs in the remaining portion to the left of the theater. There are floor-to-ceiling windows on what will be the right wall of the theater, and the back wall of the theater area is slightly, angled. So the space is not perfectly rectangular. There will be a sliding door that can close the entrance to the family room as a whole. So while the theater area will be open on the left side, it isn't completely open to the rest of the house. The existing construction of the room is cinder block and concrete behind insulated drywall with hardwood floors. He can put shades over the windows, but he will not have full light control. And he's planning on a sectional sofa as the theater seating. Okay. Should be seeing some images here.
Yep. Posted the diagrams that he sent. That's a nice mock-up, so it helps us visualize what we're dealing with.
Yep. And you can see the projector that he's planning on shooting onto the big old wall over there. Right?
That's right.
So anyways, he'd like some help with overall design. He's initially thinking that he'd like to wall mount a 75-inch LCD on the front wall with a motorized acoustically transparent projection screen that can roll down in front of the LCD for movies at night. Do we agree with this idea? So I guess the sectional couch is going to go like on the back wall?
Well, this is the question, because there is that projector shown in the mock-up, and he's got that right against the back wall.
Yeah.
Which is, so since it's angled and looks like sort of the longer portion is 22, so it's a little less than 22.
Maybe
but
21, yeah.
Yeah, you still have to be a bit careful because there are limitations.
Right.
Even on the Epson projectors, the JVC projectors, which is probably what we're going to recommend here, one of those two, which have nice long zoom ranges. But you do want to make sure that it's going to be able to throw the size of screen that you want from that distance. Maybe that's just, it was easier to put it there in the rendering, so that's just where they put it. Maybe they can ceiling mount it or whatever. But if you're going for a 75-inch screen, as your television that you're going to use during the day, and you wanted to retain a 30-degree field of view, you'd have to put the seats, it's basically 10 feet from eyes to screen with the 75-inch screen. Now, I'm going to assume that there's some depth to the television and the wall mount, so you're somewhere in the range of 11 feet away from the front wall, maybe 10 and a half to 11 feet.
Smack dab in the middle of the room.
Which puts you really, really in the middle of the room. So I'm thinking, okay, maybe you forgo the 30-degree field of view with the 75-inch LCD. Maybe you sit 11 or 12 feet from eyes to screen. Maybe you're 12 to 13 feet away from the front wall. That puts you in a nice place acoustically. Right. The 75-inch screen is going to be closer to maybe a 24, 25-degree field of view, which is not terrible. But then you're looking at going for like a 120-inch projection screen, something like that, which is reasonable. But yeah, just make sure that if you go for say a 120-inch projection screen, that the throw distance is going to work for your projector. You can go to projectorcentral.com, type in the model number of the projector you're considering, and it'll show you what the throw range is, and that's the distance from the screen to the lens.
And we don't always have to. In my first home theater, that I had a drop-down screen in. I guess I should say my only home theater that I had a drop-down screen in. It was not smack dab against the back wall. You know, it was out in the middle, not in the middle, but it was out in the room. I had a piece of furniture with a TV sitting on top of it. And so that was 2 or 3 feet into the room total. And then the screen dropped down in front of that TV.
Yeah, because you can ceiling mount the screen.
Yeah. So you don't have to necessarily, if you're trying to get the field of view that you want to get, and you want to have that projector on the back wall, could be that you just have the screen drop down closer to you. Sure. So it's going to be acoustically transparent anyways.
That's right, yeah. But overall, the idea of having the flat panel in there, wall mounted for during the day, you're not going to have full light control, and having a roll down screen that comes down for nighttime movies, I'm all for that.
Yeah, we've talked about, I've done it and loved it. So, and I was the same way. I was sitting way too far away from like a 50-inch screen, and it was too small, and then the projector would drop down an 82-inch.
If you're watching TV in the daytime, maybe it's news, maybe it's sports, something like that, it's fine.
Who cares? Yeah. For the audio setup, he isn't sure if he should opt for 5.2.4 or 7.2.4. He wants it to be room filling, and he wants the bass to sound even and excellent. So what's the best speaker layout, and how much of a problem is the angled wall at the back? Okay, so you're going to be, it depends on where you actually put your couch.
Yes.
That's what it comes down to. I'm going to tell you, if you put your couch on the back wall, you're going to go for 5.2.4.
Right.
If you don't put it, then you have the option of going with 7.2.4. But really, how deep is the room at this point? It's 20-something feet, right? So that's plenty of room to have, if you don't have a back row, plenty of room to have surround back speakers if you so desire. But the question is, where are you putting your side surrounds? Because it doesn't look like there's any space for them on your left wall, and there's that's all windows on your right wall. So these
so they could go on stands? They could be ceiling mounted. Yeah. They could be in ceiling, I suppose.
No, don't do that.
I wouldn't opt for that.
No, that would be last.
I'd put
option.
them on stands. That's what I would do.
If you could put them on stands, then you're golden. And that's what I would do. So depending on where you put your couch, you have the option here. If it were me, I would start with, tell me where your couch is, and I'll tell you.
Yeah, if I were setting up this room, I'd have my couch basically so that my eyes would be about 13 feet from the front wall. That'll work out. That should work out nicely acoustically, and it'll give you space behind you. You're still going to have at least about 7 feet behind you.
Right.
13 feet or so in front of you. I think that's a pretty good arrangement. It'll look reasonable with the screens that you're dealing with. So if you have that option, that's what I would suggest.
Now, the angled back wall, it's funny because we don't actually know, how much of a problem it's going to be. But my guess is that it's not going to be very much problem at all. Acoustically at least.
It makes it mathematically harder to predict.
Yeah.
Some people are going to say it's a benefit because if you don't have parallel walls, the standing waves are more irregular. It's not that you don't have standing waves. It's just that they're more irregular. But what this basically means, especially since your entire theater is offset, you got this space over to the left, so it's not symmetrical. It's not a rectangle. It means you're still going to want dual subwoofers, but it's going to mean the trial and error process. That's really what it means.
Yeah, more. It may not even end up being that big of a deal in the end. You may do a little bit of trial and error and go, it sounds pretty good, so I'm happy.
That's right.
So my guess is it's going to be more of that and less of the, I'm going to spend the next 3 weekends trying to figure this thing out.
Yeah. It's just, we can't tell you, put it in the middle of the front wall, middle of the back wall of your theater area, and that's going to work out perfectly, because mathematically that isn't the case here. It's asymmetrical layout, it's asymmetrical walls, so the math no longer works out for middle of the opposing walls and it's all going to be perfect. That isn't the case here. So it just means there might be some trial and error that you have to do, adjusting the phase knob of one of the subwoofers. You set one, and you leave that one alone, the one that's farther away from you. So whatever is physically farther away from you, you leave that one alone. The one that's physically closer to you, you adjust its phase knob. You sit in each of your seats. You listen to a bass sweep playing on repeat, and you little by little adjust the phase knob of the sub that's physically closer to you until you get a nice even response, a uniform response. Doesn't necessarily have to be perfectly linear, because we can fix that with EQ, but we want, if it has humps and dips, we want the same humps and dips in every seat. And that way, when you go and equalize it, it'll equalize the same for every seat. That's the goal. So could be some trial and error. That's what you're looking at with that angled wall and the offset theater.
So I don't know. He might ask this. Does he ask where to place the subwoofers?
Nope.
Okay. Nope. Well, let's talk about it anyways. Where would you place the subwoofers in this room? Because I'm looking at it and I'm thinking.
Again, depends on where the seat goes a little bit, of course. But,
well, I'm even thinking, is that even going to be? I mean, it kind of seems like you should put them middle of the front wall, middle of the back wall as much as you can. But I kind of
in the overall space.
In the overall
kind of mean
space,
that they're to the front left of your theater area and the rear left of your theater area.
Yes.
And to the right-hand side of where the table and chairs are going to go in that extra section that's over to the left.
So it
there.
looks like it's kind of cut out. Is that kind of, where that little cutout is right there? Like you put one sort
I'm
of
not exactly
there.
Sure what's happening there.
Yeah, it's sort of where
potential, but
put one sort of there and put one like across from it if you can. But that's almost going to be where your front left speaker is going to be, anyways.
Yeah.
So it's going to be kind of weird.
But I mean, if it turns out that you've already said, okay, I'm going to put one more towards the front right of the theater and the other one somewhere on the back wall, it's like, that's okay. You're just going to have to play with the phase knob of one of them.
You definitely are if you do that, for sure. Yeah. You definitely have to do more of that. Where are we on C? Okay, no, we're on C.
You are on C.
Since he will have the opening on the left and the floor-to-ceiling windows on the right and the angled wall at the back, would he be better advised in using speakers with narrow dispersion or is wide dispersion the way to go? He was strongly considering Ascendant Acoustics Horizons speakers for center, left, and right. Are they a good choice for a space, or should he be looking for speakers with a different design? If you can get something a little bit beamier, seems like that would be okay, but I don't necessarily think it's going to make all that much difference in here, since hopefully you're going to be using some room treatments.
Yeah, there's the two different schools of thought, right? Because the one school of thought is try to get the sound to be the highest ratio of direct sound to reflected sound that you can. In other words, try to get louder direct sound versus reflected sound. So that's the school of thought that would point you more towards more directional, more beamy speakers, like Tom just said, things that have narrower dispersion that you can aim more focus-like at your seat. That's that one school of thought, more direct sound versus reflected sound. The other school of thought is you're still gonna have reflections, especially in a highly reflective room like this one. So if you're gonna have reflections anyway, and if those reflections are significantly different from the direct sound, that clues your brain in that something isn't quite right here. So the second school of thought is you're going to have reflections anyway. Let's try to make those reflections as similar to the direct sound as we can. That might smear the sound a little bit in the time domain, but it's going to keep everything sounding neutral and the way it's supposed to sound timbre-wise. So it's a little bit of a tough call. The more that you can put some absorption in this room, because hardwood floors, bare walls, floor-to-ceiling windows, anywhere you can get some absorption in here, that means rugs, thick drapes over those windows if you can, anywhere that you can put absorption panels. Back wall seems like a definite place you can line maybe floor to ceiling with as thick absorption panels as you can get in there, because you don't have that many places. It could be the ceiling, right? Where your Atmos speakers aren't, it could be the ceiling. So yeah, wherever you can put absorption, that will help you. But let's suppose you just can't put a ton of absorption in here for some reason. It's a really tough call. Yeah. It's a really tough call. I've tried both, and the issue I have with going with the very directional speakers is that if you, the viewer, moves at all while you're watching, you notice the change in sound. It happens. If you stay very, very still, it can sound good. But if you tend to move around at all, it breaks up. You get the ones that are wider dispersion. You maybe get a little bit of that smearing in the time. Believe me, it doesn't sound bad at all. Your brain filters that fantastically well.
Right.
Does a really, really good job of it. It's by comparison. If you went in there with a microphone and you recorded the sound in a more reflective room with wide dispersion speakers, and then you went into one that's well treated, you go, oh, there's clearly some smearing going on if you heard them A-B, those two recordings compared to each other. But your brain does a really, really good job of filtering it. So, yeah, I can't even really say. They have pluses and minuses for both of them. Hopefully the description I gave, you might say, I know the type of person I am.
Right.
And maybe that'll help in that regard.
If at all possible, you want to try to treat that front wall of your theater area and that back wall as much as you can. If at all possible, you can get yourself a panel that you can use, that you can move into place.
On a stand.
On a stand for your front right speaker, so that it's not directly reflecting into that window.
Yeah.
Okay. If you can do those things...
Yeah, because Gig has both stands for the regular panels and just freestanding panels.
Yeah. And a rug, like Rob said, a rug, and anything else you can do as well. But if you can treat the front wall and the back wall, that would make a big difference, I think.
Yep.
Your left speakers will be firing into the void over there. It's not a big void, but it is going to bounce around over there, and you're not going to really be able to do much about that. But the front right speaker is going to sound significantly different because of that very quick, very probably strong reflection you're going to get off that window.
Yeah.
So if you can just get a panel that you can move into place when it's time to really pay attention to the theater, then that would probably be good for you. So think about that.
My personal preference is for the wider dispersion, because I don't like having to sit very, very still to get the pinpoint laser-like sound coming at me. It's not my bag. But that's me. I know that about myself, so that's okay.
I think that if he treats the front wall, back wall, and gets that one panel over there, I think it's going to be 6 of one, half done lives in another. It's not going to make any difference.
Yeah, once you start getting more absorption in there, it helps ameliorate the problems. Actually, kind of both, to be honest.
Yeah.
So it's always a good idea if you can.
So he says, any other thoughts on laying out this theater area? He just wants to optimize his setup space, so he's open to whatever ideas would deliver the best results. Well, we've given you a lot of ideas already.
Yeah, we talked about the projector placement, seating placement, subwoofer placement, so that's a lot of stuff.
I don't really... I think what you're doing is just fine. I mean, you could flip the entire area so that the screen, plops down in front of the windows if you really wanted to.
Oh, I see.
That would make it easier for you to have side surrounds and all of that. But then, you got put speakers in front of your windows. I mean, I don't know.
Having the flat panel there might be a
non-starter. I did that in Jacksonville for a while. We had we got rid of the TV, and then we got some blackout drapes, and then we just there was just a couple speakers kind of like off the side of our window, and it just looked like there was a piece of furniture there which had a lot of my home theater gear in it. It just kind of looked like there's this piece of furniture there and a couple of couches, and you could sit down and talk and stuff. And then when you want the watch TV, you close the drapes and you drop the screen. Everybody's like, "Whoa!" We didn't have complete light control in there either. Right. Now we didn't have as many windows as you did either. So
that's a lot of windows.
That's a lot of windows.
And he was saying shades is the plan. That didn't sound like super thick drapes.
No, you got to have better than shades.
It'd be nice if you had drapes, man. It'd be really nice.
I'm not a huge fan of drapes myself, but blackout drapes are not expensive, and
it's more about just the second layer of lining, really.
Yeah,
that's all.
It's just you can. They're just aesthetically not very nice. I'm gonna be honest with you. It very quickly starts feeling like Phantom of the Opera in there. You're like, whoa, what is with those drapes, dude? No, don't worry about it.
Dramatic.
This is from Sun. I'm probably saying that wrong. Anyways, this is from Vietnam. So there we go. Another country on the tick list. Someone needs to make a map and put some AVRant pins in it.
That's right.
So Sun says he's found AVRant through randomly browsing on YouTube, and he liked our show, so he decided to email us. That's great. Thank you, Sun.
Thank you.
He has a dedicated 2-channel system with a pair of Klipsch RPM 160M bookshelf speakers and a Cambridge Audio CXA60 integrated amp. After a year of using just the speakers, he decided to add a subwoofer to the system. The CXA does provide an RCA subwoofer output, although it does not offer any crossover adjustments. He did some research and checked out some brands that often pop up in advertisements on AV websites. That's easy to do. And he noticed the brands like SVS and JL Audio that offer some fairly compact models with high wattage amplifiers. But he also came across a lot of praise for REL subwoofers, particularly among 2-channel audiophiles. There's your problem right there. He knows that that the REL subwoofers might have higher prices and lower wattages. He also read through their brochures and manuals and saw that they recommend using high-level speaker wire inputs rather than typical RCA subwoofer input, with the claim that it helps their sub to blend better with the main speakers. So is that true? And should he buy an REL subwoofer, or would an SVS or JL Audio model be better? Well, first of all, you son, thank you for emailing us from Vietnam and for finding us on YouTube and proving that YouTube is actually doing something and validating all the work that Austin is doing. Thank you, Austin. You could put one down in the win column. Yeah, okay. So REL, Rob, refresh my memory. I seem to remember us talking about them recently. Are they the ones that came out with a new sub that we liked?
Nope.
Okay. That's
no.
Who am I thinking of?
Might have been Power Sound. That was recently we talked about.
No. It was somebody new that we don't talk enough about.
RSL.
That's the one. All right. So one letter off.
Very different.
All right. So, son, and this you got to understand we've all done this journey that you're doing right now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we've all walked these same footsteps. It's a well-trodden path paved by the likes of Rob and I many times over. Sometimes we do it over again just because we forget and start going down the rabbit hole. Yeah. So whenever it's very dangerous to start comparing just specs, just looking at amplifier wattage and other things and saying, well, maybe that this is an absolute definer of quality. What does amplifier power give you? Well, it gives you the ability to hopefully play louder and often to fill up more space. Is that always the case? Not necessarily.
Yeah, sometimes it depends on the driver, right? The driver's impedance, the driver's sensitivity, and then the cabinet size.
Yeah, that's right. Sometimes what it gives you, you have a very small box with a very big driver in it, and it's sealed, and you're trying to get sound out of it, so you need to pump a bajillion watts in it to make it happen. Does that make that itty-bitty subwoofer better than some lower wattage subwoofer that is much larger in a ported box? Well, it's smaller and it's going to play, quite loud considering its size and quite low considering its size. But the other one is probably going to play louder and lower, even though it has less watts. If that makes sense. It's just because of the design of the subwoofers.
Give up, having the larger physical size.
That's right. Trade-off. That's right. So by comparing these very specific things, you're sort of misleading yourself in a way, or you're trying to find an easy shortcut for which subwoofers are better than other subwoofers and what kind of specifications should you look for. It's a whole, you have to take a holistic look at the sub. What is the sub trying to do? Now, in that vein, you haven't told us anything about the size of the room that you're trying to put the subwoofer in, or how close you're sitting to the sub, or what you're actually trying to do with it. So I mean, you've got a two-channel system with an integrated amp and some bookshelf speakers. In my mind, you're in an office. You're sitting at a computer, and this is what you listen to when you're doing your work. Is that true? I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe this is
a spare bedroom, but it could be a living room. It could be a great room for all we know.
Exactly. So we're going to need a little bit more information to really steer you along the right path. But to drill down into this, the higher prices, the lower wattages of RELs, and the love of the audiophile community, they all sort of paint a picture. And that picture is, this is a subwoofer, this is a company that we like because nobody knows about it other than us, and therefore
they're quite big in Europe.
They are
quite popular in Europe.
They are, where rooms tend to be a lot smaller. And that you don't have as much space to fill up, and brands like SVS and JL Audio maybe cost a lot more too. I don't know what the shipping and stuff like that is
this whole connecting it with speaker wire rather than the RCA subwoofer connection, that screams of the catering to the audiophile crowd who believes this is not based on fact, it's not based on blind testing.
No.
It's just based on this long-held belief that your front, left, and right speakers must be set to full range.
Right.
That's where that came from. They're saying the audiophiles already believe, and we're not going to be able to dissuade them of this belief, that their front, left, right speakers must be set to full range. Therefore, we're going to inject our subwoofer into that same signal path
Right.
by just taking the same speaker wire they're already using and channeling it through our subwoofer on the way to the front, left, right speakers. That's where that came from. It does not sound smoother. It does not help them integrate better with the front, left, or right speakers. Nope. In fact, I would say it is the inferior way to do things, because now your speakers are still attempting to play all the way down to 20 hertz or lower, which A, they probably can't do, and B, even if they could, they're not in the best locations in your room to make that sound nice and linear and even across your seating. So having the RCA sub, now in your case, it doesn't really sound like your integrated amp has a crossover. It's probably not filtering your front, left, right speakers anyway.
Yeah.
So in this case, it's kind of 6 of one, half a dozen of another. It's kind of the same outcome.
You're going to get full range out of your speakers no matter what, because of the capabilities of your integrated amp.
But what is nice is that the subwoofer output that you have on that Cambridge is a summed mono subwoofer signal.
Yeah.
That's important. You want that. The subwoofer signal should be mono. There's no such thing as stereo bass. Doesn't happen until you get above 80 hertz. Then maybe, it's pretty unlikely, but maybe you start to get some stereo separation.
A little bit,
but
not much.
For the subwoofer, it should be a mono signal, so at least you have that. You should absolutely connect using the subwoofer output of your Cambridge. You will need to adjust the crossover knob on the sub to get it to blend smoothly with your speakers that are still getting a full range signal. But that is the correct connection path. The claim that using the speaker wire will somehow make it blend better is complete bunk. That isn't the case. But I know where that came from, right? It's to cater to the audiophile crowd. So you can look at some other specs on the sub. The specs of the subs are all clues. None of them are definitive indicators. You can't just look at one spec and say, that tells me this sub is better than that sub. Doesn't work that easily, but they are clues. And if you look at most of the REL subs, if you look at their frequency response, where they are minus 3 dB, the range of frequencies where they are plus or minus 3 dB, they don't play quite as low as the SVS and the JL Audio. The SVS and JL Audio all play down to 20 hertz or lower. That's just a thing that they do. So any audible sound, they will produce it for you. The REL subs, not necessarily the case. Some of the big ones do from REL, but not mostly.
Right.
You said where you're living, because it could be different in Vietnam, right? Definitely could be different. But you said that the REL subs are more expensive where you are than getting an SVS or JL Audio. That answers the question, as far as I'm concerned.
If you get either one of those two subs, the SVS or JL Audio, you should jump on those.
That's right. If those are less expensive than REL, you are not giving up performance by getting the SVS or the JL Audio. I'm not going to say declaratively that you're getting better performance, but by and large, you're getting better performance with the less expensive option. That's usually a very nice way to go.
I would like to figure out the way that this guy get a crossover going in this whole thing.
I mean, he could just insert an external high-pass filter onto the speaker output.
Yeah, I suppose. That would make sense. I was trying to think of a way of getting a mini DSP into this thing, but...
You'd have to have an external amplifier.
Yeah, you'd have to have an external amp, which wasn't going to work. So, anyways, if that's a different question. But for right now, the answer is... Why is everybody talking about REL? Because they want to. If you read the SVS literature, they'll say they will cater to the audiophile crowd by saying the correct way to do it is this, but if you really want to do it this other way, that's okay too.
Yeah, it'll function. It'll work.
That's okay too. That's all the stuff the audiophiles want to do. If you want to let it break it in for 40 hours, knock yourself out.
Yeah, it's not going to hurt it.
It's certainly not going to hurt a sub. Go ahead and play test tones for 40 hours. We'll see you later. Then you can tell us how much better it sounded and how much looser or whatever, tighter or whatever crap it is that you come up with. So let us know what you come up with, and we'd love to hear back from you. David. This comes from Facebook. David is using an Xbox One S as his Blu-ray player and streaming source with his Vizio E-Series TV and Marantz SR5011. So he's getting pretty bad lip sync, lip syncing issues here. He was able to correct it for Blu-rays with the Marantz's audio delay function, but for Netflix, it's still way off. And he can't seem to be corrected manually. So would a standalone Ultra HD Blu-ray player or different streaming box solve the problem? Why do I think this is HDMI CEC issue? That's the first thing that popped into my head when I read this question.
Shouldn't be, but who knows? Because that thing causes so many problems you wouldn't expect.
That was the first thing that popped into my head. Was that was now? I've got an Xbox One. I do, yes, an Xbox One, and I've had the original Xbox. I have had lip syncs issues before. But it was like so minor, I didn't notice it until I think I started playing Rock Band on the 360. But Netflix in particular, I've had lip sync issues, but it's always with specific episodes of specific TV shows, which makes me think it's the episode of the TV show, and it's not it's not me, it's that TV show, and it just drives me crazy. My wife's sitting there next to me. I'm like, "How can you watch this?" She's like, "What?" I'm like. The lips are not moving the same time. Were you kidding me? How can you watch this? She's like, I don't know what you're talking about, Tommy. Just go away. So,
I hate lip sync problems
because
they're
nuts.
There are multiple things that it could be, and there's no easy way to just say, "Oh, we know exactly what it is," because there are multiple things that could cause the problem. So. The first and foremost, it sounds as though if you were able to correct the lip sync problem manually for Blu-rays, that means the audio must have been preceding the video. It means there must have been a video delay, and the audio was coming out before the video, because then you could delay the audio and get it back in sync. That makes me wonder if you have some of the video processing settings in your Vizio E-Series TV activated, specifically frame interpolation, where it's attempting to create frames that didn't exist in the original source to give you a smoother, that I call weird looking image. So I think, what the heck does Vizio call theirs? True motion?
Yeah, I think it's something like that. Yeah.
It's going to be something with the word motion, and it's smart motion, smooth motion, something to that effect. Make sure that is turned off. Because that could definitely be or at least a contributing factor to it. In fact, try to turn off any video. There shouldn't be noise reduction. There shouldn't be MPEG block reduction. There shouldn't be edge enhancement.
Turn off everything you can. In fact, check your receiver as well.
Dynamic
and make sure that
anything shouldn't be on. Yeah, turn all the video processing off. Turn all the video processing off in your AV receiver as well. Yep. Make sure that thing is just passing through the video signal. That takes care of the settings that you can kind of do in your display and your AV receiver. Now, the Vizio E-Series, once you have all the video processing turns off, has very low input lag. And the AV receiver, once it isn't processing the video, has very low lag. So that, if it was one of those problems, that will fix that. The other side of it is the Xbox One S, the updates, you can't call them recent anymore, but they're not exactly old, that allow all the bitstream output. Mm-hmm. Those things screw up. That you keep having to turn them off and turn them back on again. I sometimes get echoes. I sometimes get reverb. Turn it off, turn it back on. In the settings, I'm talking in the Xbox One's audio settings.
Turn bitstream on and off?
Turn bitstream on and off. Yep. Turn it back to PCM. Just for a moment. Just turn it back to PCM. You'll hear the little sound cut out for a moment and come back in. And then turn it back to bitstream, and all the weird reverb and crap is gone. I don't know why it does that. It's a computer. It has problems. It has bugs. But I've had that. I've had that more than once.
I've never experienced that
with my own Xbox. So that's a simple thing. Make sure that the bitstream output is clean just by toggling it on and off. Stupid thing. But those are the suggestions I can give you. I don't know if that will fix your problem. Make sure that HDMI CEC, often called HDMI control, is turned off on everything, because that is a stupid thing that screws things up for no reason. do that, and hopefully that'll fix the problem for you.
So the real question he asked, though, was would a standalone Ultra HD Blu-ray player or different streaming box solve this problem? And the answer is we don't know. Because we don't know where the problem really lies.
Yeah.
The problem is lying in the fact that your TV is trying to do a bunch of stuff that you don't really need it to do. Then no, it's not going to solve the problem.
Right.
You're just going to have a different box doing different stuff. Now, he did not say that he had any other sources connected to this thing and that they were all working fine except for his Xbox One. Now, if he had said that, we would be in a real pickle.
Yeah.
Because I know for sure that we would have no idea what the Xbox could be doing to make streaming different than,
Yeah, I mean, I don't have an Xbox One S. I have an original Xbox One, a launch version Xbox One. I can tell you that isn't just inherently causing lip sync problems.
Right.
Like I say, it's got this weird thing where I have to toggle the bitstream off and on every once in a while to stop it from reverbing on me. But yeah, it's not just inherently, at least not mine. So,
but it does make sense that if your TV is doing processing, that the Netflix would be different than the Blu-ray, because the Blu-ray, when it comes in, is coming in at 1080p, like clean, and if you're watching does the Xbox One S2 have 4K?
It does 4K, that's right.
So if you're watching Ultra HD Blu-ray and your E-Series is able to show 4K, you're getting 4K direct. So yes, that could be making a difference. But your Netflix, depending on your connection, is not going to be 1080p, and it's not going to be 4K, and it's not going to be. So there's going to be more processing that has to happen. So that is maybe some evidence that it is the settings of your TV, and that this can be
because out of the box, some of them are weird. So yeah.
I kind of dread my friend's M series going in there and trying to figure everything out. His son is already absconded with the remote, by the way. The tablet.
Well, you can control it with an app on your smartphone.
That's
so
right.
Easy.
The tablet has been loaded up with games and now does that instead. So I forget the name of this guy that we're talking to. David says his PC 2000, his SVS PC 2000 can crush the ROM, so output's not a problem. And he said I'm putting a second sub in the right front corner, just as we suggested. But he can't help but wonder, what if it were dual 13 Ultras or even 16 Ultras? Are we saying there's no difference at all to be had? Could we use our own rooms as examples? If Tom replaced his dual PC-12 NSDs or Rob replaced his dual PC-13 Ultras, what would be the audible effect if we went down to, say, dual SB-1000s and then up to dual PB-16 Ultras? Okay, my room is not as small as Rob's, but I think the SBs would be just fine in here. I would be missing some very, very lowest end output compared to the PC-12 NSDs if I went down to them. Audibly, I don't know how much I would notice the difference. I don't know that I would notice that much of a difference audibly.
It'd be small.
The tactile difference, though, would be maybe not super noticeable, but would be measurable for sure. You know how much my room would shake, and
right? Peak headroom output, man.
And just being able to play tones that are lower than the SB could. Now, if I went back up to the PB16 Ultras, I think it's the same thing would be happening on the other side. I would not be missing anything audibly or gaining anything audibly, because audibly I would still have calibrated them so that they are the same loudness as the other ones. So I would still be hearing the full, down to 20 hertz, but they could play much lower, which means there may be tones that I had not felt before that I would be feeling then.
Possibly. Yeah, I mean, those 16 Ultras can go right down into the 10 hertz range.
And how much actual content is there for there?
Very little.
Almost none.
There are some specific scenes that people have come across,
But
like
so what would be the difference? And this is what it comes to me. This is where I have to constantly fight myself, because I look at the numbers. I'm like, I want something to go down into the teens. I need it. It's important for my well-being. I will notice a difference. And I know I have to remind myself, dude, you are not going to hear a difference. You're not going to hear a difference. You're not going to feel a difference. Once you pressurize your space and you're getting the full 20 hertz, maybe down a couple of extra hertz, so you get a couple of those tones that are a little bit lower, you've done what you need to do. You're done.
Yeah.
Yes, you can have a bigger subwoofer in there, but it's not going to be doing anything more for you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty darn close to saying, in my tiny room, there's like no difference to be had. not with this selection. I mean, I guess if I played some specific scenes that hit 20, 18, and then down into 10 hertz, I could be measured. I might be able to feel something of it. I might be able to, cause the doors at the back of my room to rattle more.
Yeah, you might find a new rattle you didn't know was there.
But I mean, for the vast majority, if you blindfolded me and you calibrated a pair of SB1000s, a pair of my PC13 Ultras, and a pair of PB16 Ultras, and you properly calibrated them so that one isn't obviously louder than the other just because it was miscalibrated, I don't think I can tell any difference. I don't think there's any difference to be had. Not for the vast majority of content with properly calibrated, because the SB1000s can pressurize my tiny room.
Yeah.
There's nothing left to do in the base.
He asked, lastly, will AVRant ever be presented in HDR with Atmos sound? Maybe by episode 1000, we could fling paper clips at the ceiling and shine a flashlight at the camera just for effect. Yeah, okay. Well, we'll talk about that when we get to 1000.
Yeah, we got 4 more years to go. So.
All right.
Or no, more than that, 1,000. That's 9 more years to go.
Is that right? No. Episode 1000. We're on 500 now. So, yeah, 4 more
550, yeah, but it's 50 episodes or so per year.
Oh, right. I was thinking days.
Not 100 per year, so.
Yeah. Rob. This is not this Rob. This is Rob W. So, first, some reminders. Rob is finishing his large 20 by 24 by 9 foot basement, with the back of the room being used as a space for a pool table and the front of the room being his theater with a 9-foot viewing distance from ice to screen. 3 of the walls are exterior walls, and the 4th wall having a double door that leads to the kids' playroom next door. The room directly above is the family room, and he wanted to make sure he has good soundproofing so you won't hear footfall noise, and to make sure people can talk upstairs while a movie is playing downstairs without bothering each other. The space is completely gutted right now. It's bare concrete floor, open ceiling joist, and bare studs on the walls. Once this room is finished and closed up, they absolutely do not want to have to open anything up again ever. So he wants to get the plans right and do it properly the first time.
Fair enough.
All right, we got some pictures. I guess you're probably showing.
Yes, already been shown.
The changes were made. Some changes were made. They decided to spend the extra for spray foam on all the exterior walls. They decoupled the HVAC system from the room as much as possible, and a huge LVL beam was installed for load bearing. These upgrades have now reduced the budget he had available for finishing the room. Based on soundproofing research, he had planned on insulating the walls and ceiling with Roxol, installing sound clips and hat channels on the ceiling, and using 2 layers of 5/8-inch drywall with green glue in between for maximum soundproofing. However, the budget to do that no longer exists. Right away, lots of people on the forums are saying that the cheaper pink stuff fiberglass insulation, strictly from a sound reduction point of view, is just as effective as the more expensive rock wool. So can he save some money there?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so. That's kind of what I put in my walls, basically, and it works pretty well. I mean, the big sound leaker is the door. My door is the biggest issue. The kids were watching a movie in here while we were in the other room, and they left the door open, and it was a big problem. I closed the door. It was a slightly less problem, but you could still hear it through the door. So. Yeah, you can throw some regular, especially considering all the other stuff he's going to do. Throwing up that pink stuff, I think, is just fine.
Yeah, no, generally, I like the Roxol because it's easier to work with.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? It holds its shape a little bit more. It's easier to cut, to shape, and all that type of stuff. But if you gotta save pennies, if you gotta save money everywhere that you can, from an acoustic point of view, the cheapest bat insulation is just as effective. Sometimes that almost loose fill white fiberglass insulation that they have sometimes. Usually it goes in garages.
Yeah.
But that's still just as effective, and sometimes that's even cheaper. So don't worry too much about that. You can certainly save money there if you want to. Just might be a little bit more of a hassle to work with, that's all.
Well, he's not going to be working with it, so it doesn't matter.
It could be, I don't know.
Oh, yeah, we don't know if he's doing it himself. So with 2 inches of spray foam on the exterior walls, is it still necessary to fill the remaining space in the exterior wall cavities with insulation?
Ideally, you would. The spray foam is a fantastic thermal break, but it's still kind of rigid.
Yeah.
The point is to not let air movement happen in the cavities, in the bays of the walls. Again, you can go with the cheapest fiberglass bat insulation. You don't have to worry about going for more expensive stuff there. So the walls are all open. You don't want to open them again. It's a pretty low cost to just throw the cheap bat insulation in those bays. Ideally, you would.
Yeah. So since the fully soundproofed ceiling is too expensive, what should be his plan of attack? Does it make sense to still do some of the soundproofing constructions, like, say, still use sound clips and hat channels, but only install 1 layer of drywall? Is there a priority? Definitely do this, but skip that? Or is this an all-or-nothing type of situation?
Well, I have a solution.
All right, what's your solution? Don't
T-bar ceiling. Drop ceiling.
Yeah, you can do that.
Those can be inexpensive, and they actually give you a lot more of the benefits than just trying to get away with the 1 layer of drywall or something like that. They give you the decoupling. The T-bar ceiling is automatically decoupled from the joists above. They give you the damping if you get the foam, the squishier type ceiling tiles, right? Don't get the super skinny plastic layer ones that are going to rattle up there. Get the ones that have a little bit of foaminess to them. They're usually called acoustic ceiling tiles, but they don't have to be expensive. And that gets you damping right there. You're going to have the cheap insulation above that gets you the insulation. The only thing you're lacking is the mass, right? You don't have the high mass of the double layers of drywall. You've given that up, but you've saved a ton of money, and you actually have if you get acoustic ceiling tiles in a T-bar ceiling, that's pretty darn effective.
What if he doesn't want that? What if he still wants drywall up there?
Don't. do this first, save up, and do the drywall later, because the other great thing about a T-bar ceiling is it's easy to take down and replace later if you want to. Yeah. Because, I mean...
He might be in a situation where he's got to have drywall in the ceiling. So if he does that, does he have to do the hat channels and all
it's
that
a
stuff?
basement. I've never heard of having to.
Well, I'm saying maybe for aesthetic reasons. Maybe they're doing all this stuff. They want to be able to sell the house later. They want to have a drop ceiling.
If you put up 1 layer, it's a heck of a thing to put up the second layer later, because the ceiling has to be above the walls. So you'd have to cut back the drywall that's on the walls so that you can install the second layer of drywall. Like, it's a whole thing to only put up 1 layer of drywall first.
So basically, what you're saying is, if he doesn't do the dual layer of drywall, what about the hat channels and all that stuff? He has to do all of it, right? You can't do just one of it. It's either all or nothing on that, or do the drop ceiling. You
could. It's just that the future renovation to get where you want to get is so much more cost and hassle that it's not. Well, like the drop ceiling, if you can do that now, because that can be really quite inexpensive, right?
Yeah.
T-bar ceilings are not, and you can do that yourself. If there was gonna be professional installation, putting in a T-bar ceiling is not difficult. That is something you can do yourself for sure. So you could save a lot of money there. And the important thing is the results are actually going to be better than trying to skimp on the other one.
Right. Yeah. So he says now that the LVL support beam is installed, he knows it's going to be roughly 5 feet in front of where the display will go. And it now hangs down 16 inches from the 9-foot ceiling. Mm-hmm. Based on our previous advice, they're going for a flat panel TV right now, but since everything is open, he still wants to pre-wire it for a projector. It seems as though he could simply use a ceiling mount extension or a pole to lower the projector enough that it will not have its light blocked by the LVL beam that's hanging down. It's only 16 inches down, right?
Yeah, from a 9-foot
ceiling. Yeah, okay. Sorry. But can we explain to him how the projector placement would actually work so that he won't get shadows from people's heads and won't have that image blocked by the LVL beam? Okay, well, first of all, Rob's going to give you all the the math stuff.
Sure.
But remember, what the projector, when it hangs down, usually if you can get in line with the very top of your screen with the lens, you can project onto that screen. So that screen is only going to could probably be 2 feet off the ground or something like that for most cases, which means, or it might be even higher than that, which means it's still going to be 3 or 4 feet from the the top of your ceiling, or at least 2 or 3 feet from the top of your ceiling, which is more than 16 inches. So this beam is not going to be an issue.
Yeah, no, I mean, all you have to have is a situation where the lens of the projector is just below the height of the beam.
Yeah.
And then make sure that the top edge of your screen is also just below the height of the beam. And now the beam is effectively not in the way of the projector at all. And unless the projector is way far back,
right,
and you're sitting, so
very
you've got
close.
a huge distance, it's going to be over top of your head. So that's not, I mean, maybe if you stood up and reached your hands up in front of the lens, you could create a shadow. Okay. But that's not going to be a situation where people are sitting in the seat and watching a movie. I'm thinking that if you are between, let's say he ends up moving his seat back a little bit, but although he can't really because he's got the pool table.
Right.
But let's say it's somewhere between a 9 and a 12-foot seating distance, right? Seems like it's going to be. Then your screen size is going to be, I would suggest, somewhere between 106 to 120 inches diagonal. That means the height of your screen is going to be somewhere between 52 to 59 inches. That's going to be the height of the actual image of your screen. If we put the bottom edge of that between 20 to 24 inches off the floor, and let's even assume that you're going to install the T-bar ceiling, and that's going to drop you down to 8.5-foot ceiling height, right? But that's also going to have part of that beam within it, right? If we drop it down 6 inches, now the beam is only 10 inches below the drop ceiling, right? So if you add all that up, you're going to have a bare minimum of 19 inches of space above the top edge of your screen. Even if you mount it as high as THX says to, even if you have the drop ceiling and you have it 2 feet off the floor and you go for the larger 120-inch size and it's a 59, you still have 19 inches of space above the top of the screen that exceeds the 10 to 16 inches of the beam. This should not be a problem.
Yeah.
Lens of the projector just below the height of the beam. That's all you need to worry about.
This beam right here might be your saving grace. You got this beam hanging out in the middle of your ceiling. You're like, hey, let's just drop a ceiling down so it's in line. It'll acoustically be.
Well, that's dropping at 16. And all of a sudden you went from a 9-foot to a 7.5-foot ceiling.
7.5 is a little bit low, yeah.
That's not fun. I wouldn't do that.
Still drop it down a little bit anyways.
It's one little beam at one end of the room. It's okay to have that protruding.
Oh, yeah. It happens all the time. Infinite Gary. Gary has a 2.35 to 1 aspect ratio projection screen. He tried using a setup with an anamorphic lens in front of his projector, but ultimately settled on simply filling the width of his screen by zooming in on the projector and having the projector spill some light above and below his physical screen. Some projectors and video processors offer a digital blanking feature that shuts off the pixels above and below the 2.35 to 1 portion of the image, should he be inclined to use this feature. I don't care. Yeah, sure. Yes.
So first thing to make very clear, the blanking feature doesn't magically make the projector produce no light from those black bars.
It's still going to be black bars.
It's still black bars.
Right.
So let's say you're watching a Blu-ray movie or an Ultra HD Blu-ray movie that's in 2.35 to 1 aspect ratio. So on the disc itself, there are black bars at the top and bottom, right?
Yes.
You put that image out there, you engage this digital blanking feature that's in the projector or in the video processor. The effect is no difference. It is exactly the same.
Right.
Now, where this could be useful is
when you're watching Ghostbusters.
Yeah. Or something that, IMAX format, or it switches between IMAX and 2.35 to 1 like The Dark Knight does.
Right.
That's where this could be useful, because in those things, there will be some portions of the movie where there is full-on light, full-on image being projected above and below your physical screen. Now, if you've blacked all that out with Velvet, you're not going to see it. But if you see when there is light, a full-on 16:9 image, you've zoomed that in to fill the full width of your 2.35 to 1 screen. Now there is light being projected above and below. You engage the digital blanking feature then, and now it essentially just overlays black bars on top of the 16:9 image to give you black bars that aren't there in the source. That's its only use. It's not going to make a lick of difference to movies that are already 2.35 to 1 on the disc itself.
Mm-hmm. No. Sorry, I was deleting emails. All right, okay. Gary, there you go. Ken owns a Marantz SR 1607 Slimline receiver. That's an older one, isn't it? It's a couple of years old.
Right? No, 1607 is quite new.
Is it really?
Yep. It's one of the slim lines, though.
Okay. Anyways, he also bought a Emotiva Bass Axe A500 5-channel amplifier before he realized that a 1607 only offers 2 pre-outs for the front, left, right channels, and of course for the subwoofer, but none of the other speaker channels. So he doesn't have full pre-outs, therefore he can only use 2 of his channels for this amplifier. So he was referred to the Marantz SR 5011, 6011, or 7011 as models that offer a full set of pre-outs, but he wants to consider other brands besides Marantz. He still considers himself new to all this home theater stuff, so it can come across as a bit confusing or overwhelming at times.
Fair enough.
Dude, it's confusing or overwhelming for us.
Uh-huh.
So don't.
Oh yeah, sometimes I'm like, oh god, I got to keep up with all this stuff because I'm supposed to.
I'm glad
be
he does
answers.
because you know I'm not keeping up with you. I've been phoning it in for years. If he's come on, nice. Man. I mean, if he's looking at other brands, how can he tell whether or not they offer pre-outs for all of the speaker channels so that he can make full use of his 5-channel Emotiva? Dude, do you want me to tell you a secret? I'm gonna tell you a secret. I cannot even begin to start to read the specification pages and try to figure this stuff out.
Oh, heck no.
I just look at the picture of the back of the receiver and look for them.
Yup.
That is exactly what I do. I look for pre-outs. I look to see how many they got. When I wrote articles for Audioholics, I never read the specification. I would copy the specification page and post it up there, and I would look at the back of the receiver. That's how I caught that... who was it that stole the Oppo and the Universal player and stuck it in their box?
Theta or
no, not Theta.
No, Theta was the Panasonic.
That was the Panasonic. Theta. It was a.
Oh, was it that New Force one?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. It was somebody very important. Anyways, I had that's how I did all my previews and reviews and stuff like that. Is I just looked at the back panel and did write them up, and I looked at the back panel of the Oppo, and I looked at the back panel of this other one and went. This is the same back panel. I just wrote about this one. And then it all sort of fell into place. Now, that's all you're going to do. You're going to go to the receiver, the manufacturer's website. You're going to click on the receiver. You're going to click on the image of the back panel. You're going to zoom in, and you're going to look for pre-outs. And then you're going to make sure it's got enough. That's got all the ones you need.
Yeah, and out of all the brands that we typically talk about, so Marantz and Denon, their sister companies, Yamaha, Onkyo, Pioneer, Sony, all of them put the label right on there, pre-outs.
Yeah, it'll have.
So if you're looking at the back panel, you look at sometimes you do need to zoom in, but yeah, it will say pre-outs. It'll be right there. You can. A lot of them will have one subwoofer pre-out. It's the only one. It'll be purple.
Right.
Sometimes that's the case. So then oh, that's not going to work. But if you see 8 or 11 or 13, sometimes they have, then you got a full set.
Yeah. So he asked, do his speakers have to be 8 ohms? Everything seems to give its specifications at 8 ohms. What happens if his speakers are something other than 8 ohms? Well, to begin with, your speakers are 8 ohms. The reason
somewhere
yours, most speakers, the majority of almost all consumer level speakers, and even the higher end speakers, many of them are rated into 8 ohms, which means that how much power that they draw from the amplifier, it kind of averages out at 8 ohms, generally speaking.
Yeah, what's listed in a speaker specifications is the nominal impedance, which it's not a straight average, but if you're just thinking conceptually, it's like averaging, right? It's like taking the highs and the lows because it'll at some frequencies it might dip down to 3.2 ohms. At some frequencies it might be way up at 32 ohms, right? But overall it's mostly around 8. And then they'll say the nominal impedance is 8, or the nominal impedance might be 6 or 4 or some other number.
Right. So what happens if your speakers are other than 8 ohms? Well, it depends on how far away you're sitting from your speakers and how loud you want them to be. Because you can,
and how sensitive they are,
and
too.
That's true. How sensitive they are as well. So if the idea here is that lower ohm speakers that are rated at 6 ohms or 4 ohms or lower can draw heavy loads from your amplifier, which if your amplifier isn't ready for them or isn't capable, can send the amplifier into oscillation and shut the receiver down, or cause the amplifier to clip, possibly,
or just make it get really hot.
Yeah, possibly damaging your speakers and or your amplifier. So what happens if something, well, the fact of the matter is you can take the world's wussiest amplifier and plug it into the hardest to drive speaker and it will make a sound. It will not make a very loud sound, and you will have to sit very close to hear it. But everything will work just fine as long as you don't turn it too loud and you sit close enough. So if you're sitting close to your speakers and they are hard to drive, but you don't ever play them very loud, you're going to be fine most of the time.
Yeah, I mean, the 8 ohms has sort of become the industry standard.
Right.
It's most speakers out there are nominally 8 ohms. Most of the amplifier wattage ratings will definitely give you the rated power into an 8 ohm load. But the important thing to know is that at different frequencies, it's going to be a different ohm rating. If you measured what is the ohm rating of this speaker at a given frequency, it's going to be something else. Yeah. Overall, it might hover around 8, but it's going to dip lower. It's going to go higher. That's fine. That's normal. That's exactly what's expected. What's going on is the amplifier, the AV receiver, the signal that's being sent to it is a varying voltage. So you have a varying voltage going into a varying impedance, varying ohms, and those two combined tell you how much current, how many amps need to be sent by the amplifier based on the voltage going into that impedance. So that tells you that if you have lower impedance and the voltage is high, you need a lot of amps. You need a lot of current. And that means a big draw from your wall outlet, a lot of heat, and the amplifier is having to work very hard. So in general, lower ohms is more difficult to drive, but sometimes you'll find a speaker that is nominally 4 ohms, but it never dips lower than that. It'll dip down to 3.8 at its lowest. And then you'll find some speaker that's rated nominally at 8 ohms, but at some frequencies it dips down to 2. And that could be a bigger problem for an amplifier at that specific frequency.
Yeah, and we've seen that happen with speakers before. We've seen speakers that have come out that, they generally look okay, and they're rated okay, and then somebody tests them and they're like dipping down into just ridiculously low ohmage, and it's causing problems with people's amplifiers and receivers. Yeah. So,
but if you have anything that resembles normal speakers, if it's anything you could buy from a store that isn't some like super esoteric specialty shop, or something you bought from any of the online brands, it'll work with an AV receiver. They're not crazy enough to sell a speaker that isn't going to function with a normal AV receiver. That would put them out of business. It has to be some weird esoteric thing.
Yeah.
That's the only time. And if it is, they'll probably warn you, hey, you need this type of amplifier to go with this speaker because we're silly and we designed it that way.
They won't always warn you, but they should. His 1607 could do 5.2.2 Atmos, and he has loved the sound. Since he's aiming to get a new receiver that can take full advantage of his Emotiva 5-channel amplifier, is there anything beyond simply looking for Atmos to make sure it will all work smoothly together and sound as good as possible? Nope. You're okay. I would look for room correction. Make sure you get a better, if not as good. I think they just had multi-EQ on those things, right?
Those ones had regular multi-EQ. Yeah. Not XT, not XT, and not XT32.
I would be looking for XT and XT32 with sub EQ HT, whatever it's called.
Right.
I would be looking for that, but that's not what you asked. Anything that says it can do 5.2.2 Atmos will be able to do 5.2.2 Atmos, unless it's something like a Pioneer or Onkyo where you got to make sure that it can do the setup that you actually have. Because some of them won't.
I mean, if you have 7 speakers, and that's where you want to stop. You want to stop at 5.2.2, which is fine if that's what you want to do. I could point you to a specific model, which is Denon. Like I say, it's the sister company to Marantz. They have their X3300, which is, what is it, $550 right now at accessories for less?
Is about that, yeah.
And that gets you Mult EQ XT32, the highest level of Odyssey's automated room correction, and it works with the Odyssey Editor app so that you can manually tailor the sound to your liking if you don't like what it does automatically. Really powerful, definitely affordable, does 5.2.2. It's going to be tough to beat that for value. The only thing I would say is maybe you want to expand to 5.2.4. You don't have to, but maybe you want to. If you do, then that requires an AV receiver that can process 9 speakers instead of 7. So models that can do that would be like Marantz's SR6011, one that was recommended to you, or in Denon's lineup, it'd be the X4300H.
And those Denons have pre-outs? Because sometimes they don't.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the X3300 up in that series, they all have full pre-outs.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good. Mark. So Mark says, so we can get huge, bright, razor-sharp displays, and we can put a ton of speakers in our theaters, but what about our other senses? During a recent movie night, he happened to be watching a scene that where there was a thunderstorm just as a real storm was brewing outside his house. Somehow, that heightened the experience. So was it the smell, maybe the air pressure, or perhaps the sound of real rain and thunder outside? How could movies take advantage of things other than sight and sound to enhance the experience? Robin said he hated the horsey bouncing created by D-Box, but and the name, for real, D-Box. Nobody thought about that? But what if it were something more like wind against your face or the smell of real horse? No. Not the smell of real horses. That's not good. Seriously, though, what are our thoughts? Okay. About once a week, I stop my home theater because I can't tell if the sound I'm hearing inside my theater is from inside the theater or from outside the theater. Now, all in all, I think this is a good thing because it tells me I'm experiencing something so real that I am confused as to what's going on. How real do we really want it to get? You know, how real, because at a point it becomes distracting. It pulls you out of the experience if you're thinking to yourself, am I really flying right now? Am I, I mean, there's wind in my face. It smells like horse manure, I mean, is our horse? Did somebody die in here?
I mean, there exist theaters that do this sort of stuff already, right?
And I think that's a completely different thing, though, because you're in a theater that is doing it. You know that has this capability. You know you're in a new place, and you
probably paid extra for the ticket.
Whereas if you're home and your theater is tricking you into thinking you're really that the apocalypse really is happening outside because you're watching a Michael Bay movie. You're gonna say, "Oh, was that really a car crash? Was that inside or outside?" Let me pause the movie. Oh, it must have been inside. It must have been inside, Preston. You know what I mean? I think at some point it becomes distracting.
I mean, I can't say I'm enthusiastic about adding smells or wind, or I can get wind from my subwoofers
to my home theater all the time. Thank you very much. I'm a proper father. I
think it should. I think all of this stuff, I think the synchronized movement of the seats, the smells, wind, maybe, throwing water at you, that type I think it should all be used exclusively for the movement of horses. That's where I think it is.
That's where you draw the line?
That is the only application where it's acceptable. I only want to smell horses,
feel horses,
have water from their mane get flicked onto my face, feel the wind as we gallop along. Strictly applied.
What about jet skis? I feel like jet skis is a missed opportunity for you. You could get to galloping with the jet ski, boom, boom over the waves. And
that's okay. That would not take me completely out of the movie the way the horsey bouncing does. So it must be exclusively for horses.
You're joking. You would be thrown up in the air. Your popcorn would be everywhere. That would take you out of the movie. Might take you out of the seat. You need a seatbelt for the thing. No.
I just want good sight and sound. Honestly, I get that. I'm done. I'm satisfied.
I think
That's what
that
I
there's a
want.
real a need for this when we get to VR.
Yeah.
You know, to true
Well, if we want the
VR.
full holodeck experience, right,
Well,
then you start to get tactile sensation.
Yeah, I think that this research should be done, and they should be testing things like this. But I'm not going to really think that it's necessary until we're getting the sort of VR holodeck experience that we're all hoping for before we die. So we'll see. Justin Nut Beaver on Facebook. Justin picked up a pair of Trinity Phantom Saber in-ear monitors. He wanted to try them out because they come with a bunch of different physical filters that could be inserted under the ear tips. There are also multiple different types of or kinds of ear tips. He just wants to experiment and try out all the combinations to hear how they compare. But what are these physical filters actually doing to the sound, and how would they work? They aren't electric. So what do they actually do to alter the sound? Okay, so I actually did some research on this one because I was curious myself. I looked at the website. It doesn't say anything. You basically... So, if you want to know, the driver and all the stuff is inside the little housing there. And then the part that you stick the silicone tip onto, that part's removable. So you remove that and you can put in different ones. And there's like, I don't know, a bajillion of them or something. There's like
nine different pairs, they say.
3 colors, and each color has a low, base, high. Is that right? Is it? No, the colors, each color has 3 different sizes?
Yeah, there's a long and a short.
So it's 4 colors? No, you said there was 9.
There's 9 pairs total.
Oh, right.
4 of the colors give you both a long and a short version, and then one of the colors is only one length.
Okay.
And then the ear tip, the silicone ear tip or the foam ear tip goes on top of that.
Right. So the long and the short, but the filter that it's so the color though determines what the sound change is going to be though.
That's right, yeah.
Right. So that's how this thing works. So you know, there's one that's heavy bass, and then a little bit less heavy bass, and then kind of flat, and then extra treble, and then really extra treble.
Right.
And then the silver ones. What are the silver ones?
I don't know.
The gunmetal ones are where? I don't know. I really want to believe that these things. I mean, to me, I thought, okay, it's just they're just changing the you know, either putting holes in it or, you know, something in order to change physically how the air is moving through this little tube in order to change the sound, changing the width of it, maybe, you know, the dimensions of it in some way. But I really don't know what's going on with those things.
They're attenuating the sound.
Yeah, but how?
Foam.
Oh, they just putting foam in there, you think?
Different densities of foam.
Yeah.
That's all it is. That's all it is. I mean, all you can do with a non-electrical filter is attenuate the sound. So one of them you put in.
So what is the one that's? Oh, okay. We could go.
Right. If you put in a denser foam, smaller air gaps, it's going to attenuate more of the high frequencies. You're going to hear more of the bass as a result, but the high frequencies are going to get muffled more. Right. The looser you make it, the more the high frequencies are going to come through. So that's all it is. Different densities of foam.
So what are they naturally then, without anything?
Who knows?
Yeah, that's a good question. Like
that's probably what the silver ones are. They probably just let it through. They probably don't have any foam in it.
I mean, you should be able to look in them, right?
Yeah.
You should look at them.
That's all these things are. That's all any of them ever are.
This is the first time I've ever seen these things. That type of thing. Yeah.
No, I mean, you can't make the sound louder than the source.
No.
Can't do that. So all you can do is make it quieter, and you can choose whether to block more of the high frequencies or less of the high frequency. But at all times, you're blocking some of the sound. That's all you can do with a filter.
Yeah. All right. Lastly, probably we'll see here. Mitch has used a bunch of our advice and enjoyed the upgrades. He now has a JVC X770 projector, 110-inch silver ticket screen, Marantz SR7011 receiver, B&W 600 series speakers, Rhythmic FV15 sub, and NVIDIA Shield TV, Oppo 203 Ultra HD Blu-ray player, TiVo Romeo OTA DVR, simple control on his iPad, and Fusion Escape theater seating.
So some folks might remember Mitch because he is the fellow who has the very nicely vacuumed carpet. We've commented on that before. I'm showing the before photos that he sent if you're watching the YouTube feed. So before he had a flat panel, and I think the photos that we're showing right now, he had the repositioned acoustic panels that were Tom suggesting to get them all at the same height because it was making your OCD flare up.
It was.
So he had all that. Those were his before photos. And then he sent his new photos where we can see his JVC is mounted to the ceiling. The ceiling fan is gone. Because that was one of his questions. He removed it entirely, has a nice large projection screen up at the front of the room now. And he also got himself some new theater recliners. These ones have motorized headrests in addition to the motorized footrest that comes out, so you can angle your head when you're reclined back. Move things around a little bit. Still very nicely vacuumed.
Yes, so, he's got his vacuuming down. It's on point. So he took our advice, our recent advice, to rerun the Odyssey with microphone position number 1 being right in the center, equidistant from his front left and front right speakers. And even though his primary seat is physically a bit to the right of that spot, he is disappointed with the results. He uses this his setup to also listen to 2-channel music. And with this new Odyssey calibration, this phantom center image doesn't sound right anymore when he's just sitting in his primary seat. Thankfully, the new Odyssey Editor app makes it fairly simple to save and load different Odyssey calibrations, so he's able to set things back to his old setup where mic position 1 was at where he actually sits. But why did moving position 1 make such a difference in his phantom center image while listening to 2-channel?
Yeah, that is the pitfall. That is the thing. Now, we neglected to talk about it when we talked about this before. We were assuming this was surround sound, that the center channel would be active.
Right.
But yeah, you hit upon where this method of using the auto setup falls down, which is when you are listening to 2-channel, the phantom center image is going to be created where mic position number 1 takes place.
Right.
Now, if you physically moved yourself over, which probably means sitting on the arm of one of your recliners or something like that, it would look like. But if you physically moved yourself over to where mic position number was, dead ahead center, equidistant from the front, left, right speakers, you'd get a phantom center image right there. And that's because the way stereo imaging works for our ears is same time arrival to our left and right ear, same volume level to our left and right ear.
Right.
When that takes place, we image the sound as having come from straight ahead of us. But when one ear is a little bit louder than the other, we're going to shift the image over towards that louder ear. When the sound arrives at one of our ear before the other one, we're going to shift the image towards there. So since it's all been calibrated to be dead ahead center, but you are sitting off to the right, now your front right speaker is going to be closer, so the sound gets to you a little bit earlier than the front left speaker, and that front right speaker is going to be louder because you are closer to it, which means everything sounds like it got shifted to the right, where you're sitting.
Right, and we can see now what he's talking about with these couches of his. He's got an armrest right in the middle, so he is probably a foot over, if not more, a little bit more.
Yeah.
His head is from that center thing.
So we neglected to ask and to make the assumption that you might be listening to your system in 2-channel only.
Yeah.
We were thinking
Didn't
surround
even
sound
occur to me, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that your center speaker. Now, if your center speaker, if you use an upmixing and your center speaker is active, this won't be a problem. The center speaker is going to anchor the sound to the middle, and that's where the sound is going to come from. You no longer have a phantom center, you have an actual center. But if what you want to do is listen to 2-channel music in 2-channel, you are correct. You should make position number 1 where you actually sit. That is about the only way, unless you just manually adjust it, but that is about the only way to make sure that the phantom center image happens for you. Now, it's not going to happen for any other seat, but it's going to happen for your seat, and it sounds like that's the one you care about. So we were negligent in our description. You absolutely hit upon the situation where, position number 1 should be your physical seat. It's when 2-channel only is in the picture.
So he would like to get some Atmos speakers, but isn't planning on staying in this house for more than a few years. So installing in-ceiling speakers is not part of the plan. He'd consider on-ceiling speakers, though. So what would we recommend that would be easy to install on the ceiling and still provide a good timbre match with his B&W speakers? He'd prefer if they look nice and aren't too big also. I know what Rob's going to suggest because he
Oh,
always,
yes.
he
Yes,
always
you
suggests the same thing. I mean, at this point, I don't even know what people ask the question
I'm going to be
anymore.
so sad when all the stock is gone because they're a discontinued model, what I'm going to suggest, and eventually the stock's all going to be gone. I'm going to be so sad when that day comes.
Go ahead. Knock yourself out.
The Focal birds.
Yeah, oh, so shocking. Everybody.
Accessories for less. They're available in white. They pretty much blend into your ceiling. Are they a perfect timbre match all on their own to your B&W speakers? No, but
It's
they're
Atmos.
Atmos speakers for one, and you have Odyssey for two.
Yeah.
They're very neutral, easy to tune for Atmos purposes. Going to be absolutely fantastic.
You could also consider the prime elevation speakers. You can mount them on the
could.
ceiling right above your surround speakers. Or, I mean, I guess you could do it. Yeah, I think around your, because it's got walls on the side. Right above your, all the way up to the ceiling by your surround speakers and then by your front speakers. Call them front heights, front middles. I mean, top middles, sorry.
Top, middles, front
Those
heights.
also come in white. And they're
That's
not
true.
too big and they're easy to mount. They can be mounted to the ceiling if you so choose to do so. So there is that option as well. So those are the two.
I like both of those.
If you're to power his front 3 speakers with an external amp, can his Marantz SR7011 be set up to power all of the remaining speakers, or do the Atmos speakers always need to be powered externally? I think you can power all of them, right? Wait a second. No. Yeah. He can repurpose those front 3 amps, right, in this receiver.
Right.
So that's fine.
There are 9 amplifiers built in to the 7011. All of the pre-outs are always active. So you could connect 11 external amps at any time if you wanted to. The only thing you have to change is the assigning of the internal amplifiers.
Right.
So you have to say, I have 9 internal amplifiers. If I'm driving 11 speakers, 2 of the speakers must be powered externally. Right? Because you have 9 amps built in, 11 speakers total, 2 must be powered externally. Which 2 should those be? And one of the options is your front, left, right speakers. So you can assign it that your front, left, right speakers must be powered externally, and then the 9 amplifiers are then assigned to the remaining 9 speakers. You don't have to use them. You don't have to use the internal amps, but you can. So he said he wants to power his front 3 with external amplification. So you tell it, my front, left, right must be powered externally, and then that's it.
Yeah. So he asks, where should he position the Atmos speakers on the ceiling? He sits roughly 12 feet from the front speakers and 5 feet from the surround back speakers. Remember, he's also offset to the right in his primary seat. Now remember, when you rerun Odyssey, because you're going to rerun Odyssey when you get this whole thing done, you now know that rerunning it with your seat being the primary seat is what you're going to do. So it doesn't make any difference that you're off to the side because it's now going to calibrate the speaker distances and everything else in the level matching so that it sounds right at your seat.
At your seat, yeah. So you might be physically closer to the speakers that are on the right-hand side of the room.
Yeah.
But it's going to make them a little bit quieter. It's going to make the ones on the left-hand side of the room a little bit louder, and then it's going to put in the correct delays based on the distances so that the time arrival is correct. So, yeah, you don't have to physically offset the ceiling speakers.
No, you don't.
You still put them in a line with your front, left, and right speakers.
And I already told you where I thought you could put the prime elevation speakers directly up from the surround speakers and the main speakers. Directly up, near the ceiling and angled. Well, I mean, they're going to be angled anyways because they are towards you, and you're going to call them front heights and top middles. But if you want to use the focal birds, then it's usually how high is this ceiling? I don't remember.
Oh, it's just standard 8-foot ceiling.
8-foot ceiling. So what?
As far as I know, so
like 4 or 5?
4 feet behind you, 4 feet in front of you. Call them top fronts and top middles, or top rears.
Yeah.
Top fronts, top rears.
There you go. It's not, and remember, they're going to be in line with your main speakers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. However far apart your front, left, and right speakers are, the ceiling speakers will be the same distance apart.
It's not completely out of the question to paint the walls and ceiling black or gray, but he does want to sell his house in a few years, so it's not exactly an attractive idea to him.
Yeah.
Right now, the ceiling is white, though, and the walls are fairly light colors, so would it be beneficial for him to get ambient light rejecting screen? No. I'm going to be honest with you, dude. I totally don't buy into. I mean, I know it's measurable. The light bounces around the room. You can see it reflecting off. I have glossy paint in this room, I think, or semi-gloss at least. I don't know. It's whatever color this house came with is what I've got. All right, it's orange. it shouldn't be. And it's reflective. And yes, technically, if I look, I can see my screen reflecting off my glossy speakers and my glossy wall. I have white ceiling, and I don't care. I turn the lights off. I'm absolutely happy. So
yeah, I mean, in your setup, because when you're using the projector, you can make the room dark. I certainly wouldn't go gray, because the only reason to go gray is to try at just always remember that. Turn off the projector, look at your screen with no projector on, that's black.
Yeah.
Right? And if that isn't very black because you got a lot of ambient light, then a gray screen will help it make it look blacker. But that isn't your situation. You're more worried about reflections of light off the ceiling, off the walls.
He's got no back wall, though. I mean, the light's going to reflect and just leave.
At most, I would get a screen with some gain, like maybe a 1.3 gain.
Oh.
That's the most I would do in your situation.
Yeah.
A little bit of gain just means that more of the projector's light gets reflected back towards the middle, as opposed to all of it evenly dispersing off to the sides, top and bottom, and therefore getting more reflections off your ceiling, floor, and walls. So a little bit of positive gain, that's all I would do in your situation. I don't even think that's worth the cost. You went silver ticket. That's a nice low cost but good performing screen.
Yeah.
Essentially Unity gain. Yeah.
I'm
not enthused about it, man.
I know you want me to help you spend some money, but no. Any thoughts for other improvements? And I would definitely not paint that room, at all. Especially if you're going to sell it. What a waste of money and time and aggravation. So
I mean, if this was going to be a dedicated theater, you're going to be living here for the next 30 years, then man, go black, why not? Dedicated theater, that's all you're going to do in here, then go for it. But the situation you described, not worth it.
So any thoughts for other improvements he could make in his theater? Could just be aesthetics. What if he rewrapped his acoustic panels in a different fabric color or just made them black instead of tan? I'm going to scroll back up here. Hold on a second.
I was thinking if you want decoration, you could make them printed. Could make it something pretty or a pattern if you wanted to. That's up to you. It depends on what look you want.
I
if
think
you just
he's
want
got a
clean
really
look.
nice, clean look here.
It is really nice. Yeah.
I mean, aesthetically, I know you got these other older couches that are still sitting in this room. They look kind of ratty. You get rid of those. Put something else nicer over there.
Are they? No, but he moved his old recliners over and got the new recliners
I know.
in. I don't think.
I know. I'm just saying.
I mean, my only thought was maybe curtains over the windows.
I mean, that would help with your light rejection for sure.
Yeah, I mean, curtains was my main thing because you could
but look
even
how
conceivably
dark that bottom part there. Look how dark it is right there. I don't see any light coming in, or at least you pulled these things up from the bottom, right? Is that what I'm seeing here?
Right. Yeah, I think so.
I think it gets really dark. So really, what he needs is curtains over the back wall.
Yeah, well, that was actually what I was gonna say. My thought was curtains. You could put a curtain across the open area behind your seats to close off what looks like it leads into the kitchen, right?
Right.
You could put a big old curtain back there.
I think you should put it all the way to the rear. I'm looking at it from one. It's on my left, but if you're sitting down, it's on your right, in that little right rear corner back there. Have it all, but he's got the speakers in the way. You have to pull the speakers forward a little bit to make that work. But anyways, and then just pull that thing all the way across.
Yeah,
I guess. But honestly, then you're blocking. It looks
we don't
like
have a ton.
There's AC.
to say.
We got nothing, man. This place looks really nice. Just leave it alone. Stop messing with it. I'm scrolling down to see who else we're gonna not answer today because I am done. Craig, we will see you next week. And wow, Craig, that goes on. Jay, also goes on. That's a lot of words. And that's it. Okay. That's it. Great.
Yep.
All right. Craig and Jay, we will talk to you next week. Sorry we didn't get you this time. We do want to thank our listeners of the week. We want to thank Jay for his donation. He went to www.avrant.com and clicked on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link. Thank you, Jay, for the donation. We will use that to help keep this podcast afloat.
Mm-hmm. Jay, thank you so much for the donation.
And thank you, Fred, for talking us up to Accessories for Less.
Yeah, Fred, congrats on that X4300H purchase. I can't remember what the original one that he purchased from Accessories for Less, but apparently good enough experience he went back and, let them know. because it was us.
That's great.
We sent them there.
All right. If you want to get your question answered on this podcast, all you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. Feel free to rewind to the beginning of the podcast to hear all the rest of the contact information.
I did want to mention, for whatever reason, we've had some questions being sent in other various methods and not coming to the question@avrant.com. It really helps if you email us question@avrant.com. We will definitely get it there. We will definitely see it there. I do my best to gather questions from comment section at avrant.com, from Facebook, from Twitter, where have you. But if you email us question@avrant.com, it makes our lives simpler.
Let's just put it this way. If you really want it answered, email us. If you're kind of okay with it being answered or not, feel free to leave it someplace else. I mean, we check it. I check it. I check the Facebook. I check the website all the time. So we see it. We just it doesn't always get on the list as promptly as it will if you email us that question. For AVRant, I'm Tom Andry.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.